You'll have that on your end. And I got a quick announcement, and I will try really hard to remind you guys again before we go today, depending on if my little brain allows it. But remember the dates and the times for this class. And guys, please remember, starting next week, we're going to meet until 2 o'clock for a while. So these are the dates that we meet until 2. By the way, this is the email you guys have from Lane that you use to access this class. So please make sure you have our 2 o'clock time. We're going to go from 9 to 2 starting next week. Rest of September and into October a little bit. Questions on dates and times? Good morning. Okay. And don't forget too, you guys, this email, this is the email you guys have from Lane, because you guys click on this Zoom link to get here. But if you haven't gotten into the online learning system yet, with the quizzes and the PowerPoints and all that other good stuff, please make yourself a big note to do that in the next day or so, especially as we keep marching forward. So we do our first math today. We're not but a couple classes away from getting into agency and contracts and some of those things that you're going to want to have access to the online learning system for the additional tools and resources to help you understand it. Questions or comments? Online learning systems, dates, just anything in general. So we are getting ready to finish up Unit 3, and we have just a few more things to say before we pick up our calculators and do our first math. So we left each other on Tuesday, and we were talking about ad valorem. We were talking about mill rates. We were talking about tax assessed values. And depending on the verbiage, depending on the rate that you use, may depend on what state you're standing in. So North Carolina, we said, was an ad valorem state. And ad valorem just means according to value. Good morning. Ad valorem just means according to value. So in North Carolina, we're going to use the true market value or the true assessed value. Whatever they tell you the assessed value is, that's what you're going to use. That's what we mean by true assessed value. Other states may use an assessed value that's less than market value. So we'll see some problems. We'll see some examples in just a minute that say something like the assessed value is 80% of market value. Who remembers what we said the word of means in a math problem? If I say 80% of market value, what's that word of mean? I love you guys. Yeah, multiply, right? So how would you find the assessed value? You take that market value times 80%. So we'll see some examples. Guys, this is what I know. When we look at these, when you see test questions, we're always going to do what the problem tells you. So if it tells you to take 80% of market value, that's what I want you to do. Y'all, please don't argue with the problem and say, but I'm in North Carolina. We use true assessed value. Just always do what the problem tells you. The other big, and again, we'll see examples in just one second. The other big thing that differs is how we express our tax rate. So with North Carolina ad valorem, they usually express it, for example, it's going to look something like county taxes is an amount per 100, city taxes is, an amount per 100. So they got to list all the different taxes, county taxes, city taxes. Maybe you see school district taxes, fire, emergency taxes, whatever they give you for ad valorem, you want to add up the applicable taxes. And in this case, not all the times, but in this case, when you see the word per, that's just a fancy word for divide. So to get to the tax rate, we're going to take the information they give us and divide by 100. Compare that to a mill. Other states may use a mill, and a mill is just 1/1000th. So the per 100 is telling you to divide by 100. If it's a mill, you guys, the problem's not going to give you the 1,000. So you need to know that a mill is 1/1000th. And again, we'll see examples on both in just a second. But I do like the nice little side-by-side comparison. And this was a great place to start, considering this is where we ended on Tuesday. So spending just a little bit more time on taxation, specifically in North Carolina. If you guys will, please turn to your books on page, I didn't get the right book. Update. Okay, yeah, turn to your book on page. There it is, page 65. Depending on what book you're using, 64 or 65. But what we're going to be looking at near the end of Unit 3 is the taxation timetable. And we need to talk about what this means. This is one of these things that we're going to introduce you to now. We're going to use this again in Unit 21 once we get further into the class. So we will be able to revisit the taxation timetable. We will be able to briefly revisit taxes before we kind of take it on to the next level in Unit 21. So when you find this in your book, I want you guys to make a few notes. The taxation timetable, the dates that we're looking at are for this year, except for the January 5th date. The January 5th date is next year. So let's talk about what this taxation timetable means. On January 1st of every year, every homeowner in the state of North Carolina, property owner in the state of North Carolina, has a lien attached to the property for this year's taxes. Happy New Year. So we wake up on the first of the year, all property owners, residential, commercial, all property owners have a tax lien filed. Counties, cities, municipalities will assess their taxes. They spend the first half of the year or so assessing the taxes, figuring out what money they need for government functions this year, what's their budget. And then on July 1st, they're going to set the rate. The rate, the tax rate, can adjust annually. So on July 1st, we can roll out the new rate. And this is what we're talking about. North Carolina, the 1.32 per 100, the 0.89 per 100, that's the rate. The bill is mailed in August, and the taxes for this year, even though a lien was put on the property on January 1st, the taxes are not due until September 1st. This September 1st is an important date. Because again, when we get into Unit 21 and we start sharing taxes between buyers and sellers, that September 1st date is going to help us understand whether or not taxes have or have not been paid. By the way, when I start talking about sharing taxes, the year that the buyer buys, the buyer and the seller are going to share that year's tax bill. It's fair. Let's say you buy my house today. What is today? September 14th. You buy my house today. Is it fair for either one of us to pay this year's taxes? Is it fair for me to pay the whole year taxes? I only owned it until September. Is it fair for you to pay the whole year's taxes? You didn't buy it until September. So how we're going to make that fair is the buyer and the seller are going to share this year's tax bill. And that's what we're going to get into in Unit 21. That's why we get to revisit taxes. So the tax bill is due and payable, which means if we have a closing before September 1st, I don't know what the taxes are this year. So if we have a closing before September 1st, the best we can rely on is last year's taxes. Failure to pay your taxes means on January 5th of the next year, you are considered delinquent And on January 6th, they start collecting interest. So again, more on this process, introducing you to a lot of things on this slide, I know, all good things to come. But to get us started, understanding taxes, file the lien on January 1st, tax rate adjusts annually, can adjust annually on July, tax bill is due and payable September 1st, and that's going to help us when we get to Unit 21. So we mentioned earlier that the tax rate may change each year. The other figure to take into consideration is the assessed value, the tax assessed values. What was it called? North Carolina Machinery Act sets regulations on taxing bodies, counties, government, cities, municipalities. And one thing that comes with the assessed value in North Carolina is how often the assessed value can be reassessed. So in North Carolina, we do an octennial reappraisal. Octennial means that we can reassess the tax assessed value every 8 years. When they reassess the value, the tax assessed amount, they're kind of studying the growth of a whole area. Maybe it's a quadrant of the city. Maybe it's, the town, or in smaller populations, it could be the whole town. They're not studying each individual house. They're not looking at each property. They're just determining, okay, we got to adjust the assessed values, increase or decrease the assessed values. So then that way we know how to tax you. So octennial reappraisal. Cities, counties, municipalities also have the ability every 4 years to do what's called a horizontal adjustment. And a horizontal adjustment may sound something like 0.5% increase across the board. We're not studying anything. We're not looking at cities or neighborhoods or counties or municipalities. We're just going to do whatever your municipality is, whatever your control is. We're just going to do a horizontal adjustment, possibly do a horizontal adjustment every 4 years, doing the octennial reappraisal every 8. So again, please understand, the tax rate can change each year. The tax assessed value can change either every 8 years or every 4. So we're talking about two different pieces. Let's see, I'm going to go back just for 1 second. Question came in about the 31st. All these dates are for this year or the current year, except for the delinquent date is next year. So everything else is 2023, for example. The January 5th date is 2024. My homeowners on the call. Where are my homeowners on the call? You guys probably got a letter from your county January, February saying we're starting to look at the assessed values. Time to claim any new personal property taxes, da-da-da-da-da. That's what they're doing, is gathering information so they can set the rates for this year. Yeah, Cody?
You're saying from September 1st of 2023 to January 5th of 2024, that's when that's your time lot to pay your taxes.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. Yep. We can't pay it until the bill comes out. And we have until the 5th of the next year. After the 5th of next year, it's delinquent. Ad valorem taxes, yes, that's because that's your tax rate. So the question's about the ad valorem tax rate. So when you guys see that word rate, tax rate, that's what we know can adjust. They may adjust the tax rate each July. They say tax rates can adjust up or down, but we're all friends here. Let's be honest. What's happening to taxes every year? Each year. Value goes up. Guess what happens to taxes? More money. Sweet. Value goes down. Guess what happens to taxes? Not much, huh? So it goes. So tax rate can change each year. Assessed value can change every 8 years or 9. The 31st, that's right. That's when you notify them of your taxable property. So they send you that letter, and if you have taxable property, you got to turn it in. So then they have this period of time to sit down and crunch the numbers and assess everything. Two different processes, both conducted by appraisers, but the appraiser can conduct two different things. If the appraisal is the appraiser is offering their opinion, they are offering that to the lender to originate a loan. We're going to talk. I got a whole unit dedicated to the appraiser and this process of them offering their opinion of value. So the opinion of value comes in unit 17. And the opinion of value comes when the appraiser is just studying one property because one buyer is trying to originate a loan for 123 Main Street. So more on that process in unit 17. The process that we're referring to now is the tax assessed process, the process for establishing the assessed amount. And with that tax assessment, the appraisers, again, you guys, they don't go in for tax purposes and study each home. It depends on density and population. They may study the growth or the decline of half of a county, right? This is like a larger scale thing. They're not studying each specific property. So just understanding that the appraiser could be called on to do one of two things, either offer an appraisal in their opinion of value, more on that in unit 17, or they're helping the county or the municipality determine this year's assessed amount, or the octennial or the horizontal. So two different things, two different processes. We mentioned special assessments the other day, specifically government special assessments. We said first off that government special assessments are superior liens. So superior liens meaning that they're always going to be paid after this year's taxes. Delinquent real property taxes, this year's taxes are always paid first, followed by our government special assessments. And then all other liens are paid in the order in which they're recorded, except for the mechanics lien that's paid in the order in which the work began. So specific to government special assessments. The government may put a special assessment on an area, a neighborhood, a subdivision, just a street or one property if the government is going to improve that property. So maybe they're going to add sidewalks or street lighting, or maybe they're going to hook a neighborhood up to public water and sewer. They will issue a special assessment. They will take some of the cost and put it on the homeowner to help them pay for that improvement. Failure to pay means you have a superior lien on your property. So when you go to sell, the government is first or second, depending in line. You also have or may hear of HOA special assessments. Those would probably fall under more of a general lien. HOA doesn't get the priority that the government does. We're going to talk more about HOAs, those special assessments. We're getting there in unit 6. Questions? Did you guys bring your calculators today? Your brand new calculators, you bust them out of the container. There we go. All right, we got our first official math. So the first thing I'm going to do, before you start writing, hang on. I'm saying the same thing. I'm giving you a T-bar or I'm giving you 3 formulas. You guys have choices. You can either work with me and try to get the T-bar, or you got to memorize these 3 formulas. Knowing the T-bar is known in these 3 formulas. What do you guys want to do? It's up to you. Take just a minute, jot down what you need to take a picture of it or something. Guys, all formulas, no matter what avenue you decide to go, do you want to use the formulas or do you want to use the T-bar? Anything with math should go on a flashcard. You're either putting all formulas on a flashcard or you have a piece of paper at the very top. It's called formulas. So we're doing one or the other, but either way, I don't care how you do it. We've got to know this formula. Knowing the formula is like 80% of the battle. You don't know the formula, you don't know what to do with the numbers in the problem. So we can use the T-bar, if you wish, to help us solve for taxes. The number on top is our annual tax bill. Please make note of that word, annual. You know what they like to do to you guys sometimes? They like to give you the whole problem, and then they want to ask you, what are the monthly taxes? So you solve the problem for annual, and then you got to take an extra step, don't you? Once you have annual, how many months are in a year? There are 12. So once you have annual, you got to take that extra step and divide it by 12 to get monthly. So words are important. What you are solving for is annual tax bill, your annual taxes. Annual taxes are a part of the tax assessed value. The assessed value is the one that the octennial reappraisal or the horizontal adjustment. And then the rate or percent in a problem for a T-bar always goes where? Always goes in the bottom right. You guys hear my absolute word? Where does it always go? Don't question. Don't ask yourself, oh, what do I do with the rate? Julie says the rate or percent always goes in the bottom right. And in this case, we're looking at the tax rate. So it's either that 1.32 per 100 or it's the mills. So everybody have this one or both?
So
jotted
Julie,
down so we can refer to
when,
it? Yeah.
on sorry, I should have raised my hand on the icon. On the T-bar, you said that the top part usually is a smaller number. So is that how you determine if you're going to use a T-bar and you obviously you have to memorize, the part times, what you taught us the other day. How do you know what is it the smaller number? Like
usually the smaller number goes on top.
Okay.
So understanding that T-bar 101 is understanding annual tax bill is part of the assessed value. Remember the part and the whole? And those are the words we're using. Your annual tax bill is part of your assessed value.
Okay.
We do have one example. We are really far away from it, but we do have one example math that we're going to see the bigger number goes on top. But that's just that one exception. And that's a great way to help us navigate the T-bar. Remember, the rate always goes in the bottom right. And then we're dealing with two other variables, one smaller than the other. And generally speaking, that smaller number goes on top. Remember too, in the T-bar, you guys, your back fourth line means divide. That's what this line is telling us to do, is to divide. The up down line, back fourth line means divide. The up down line means to multiply. So that's what the T-bar does. That's how it gives us the three formulas that you're looking at down here at the bottom of the screen. So we have this jotted down. We good? Okay. So let's talk about how property taxes are calculated. As mentioned, we're going to do them one of two ways. If we're looking at ad valorem, we're looking at the tax rate per 100. So if the problem tells you that the city tax rate is 0.73 per 100, in this case, that word per is just a fancy word for divide. So you take the 0.73, whatever the problem gives you, divide it by 100, and now you have a tax rate of 0.0073. That's the number we can use in the T-bar. So we may have to do some work to plug in the T-bar. So ad valorem, tax rate, or tax rates are something per 100. Other states use a mill. You need to know that a mill is 1/1000. So when you see the word mill, that may be something you want to jot down on your formula page or your flashcards as well. So when you see the word mill, you know you're going to divide by 1,000, and the problem will not give you the 1,000. The problem will just say mill. So for example, the problem tells you that taxes are calculated with 17 mills. You know that means you just need to take 17, divide by 1,000, and that gives you 0.017. Again, that's the number we're looking for in the T-bar in the bottom right, the tax rate. We just looked at taking a mill and dividing it by 1,000 to get a rate. What's the opposite of divide? Multiply, right? So what if the problem gives you the rate and wants to know the mill? How do we work backwards? If we divided to get here, now we know that we need to multiply to get the mills. Working a problem forward sometimes helps us work backwards as well. So if they give you the rate of 0.017, the mill rate of 0.017, and they want to know what the mills are, then we just multiply. And I think that's, especially as you guys are getting in learning math, hopefully doing your first math homework this weekend as we work through Unit 3. You know, sometimes when you pick your calculator up and put a bunch of numbers in and you look at the answer, do you ever look at the answer and go, is that right? Is that the answer I'm looking for? And so sometimes just studying those numbers, sometimes just knowing what kind of answer you want, like 17 mills, for example, looking at the numbers can help you determine whether or not to divide or multiply. And if you're never sure, when do I divide, when do I multiply? My highly educated response to you guys is do it both ways and see what you get. Never stare at a blank piece of paper waiting on numbers to magically appear in front of you. Because you know what they're not going to do? You got to do something. So even if you don't know what to do, pick the calculator up and do something. See what you get. So ad valorem is per 100, mills are 1/1000. So we're going to go through a couple problems together, kind of work through a few of these, and then I'm not going to have all the fun. I got a couple for you guys to work as well. So let's look at a problem together, get ourselves warmed up with taxation math. First thing we're going to do when we see a word problem is just read it. So this problem says, calculate the annual property tax due for a property in Forsyth County with a property tax rate of 1.01 per 100, a market value of 285,000, and an assessed value of 250,000. So we've read the problem. I may not know what to do, but you know what? I see the word rate or percent, so I think there's a pretty good chance I can use my T-bar. So let's just go ahead and throw that down and see what we can do with it. I always want you guys to focus on and only focus on what is the question asking you. Because for this question, for this problem, that's all you care about. If you have information that is not relevant to you finding the annual property taxes, that information is called a distractor. And what's a distractor's job? To distract you. So if you always stay focused on what the question's asking, we know the formula, we know what the question's asking, this is going to help us eliminate, rule out distractors. So we know what we're solving for. I know my T-bar, so I know what I'm solving for is the number on top, annual taxes. I have a tax rate of 1.01 per 100. So if we take our calculators, let me not spill my coffee on my keyboard again. There you go. 1.01 per 100. I get a rate of 0.0101. So our 0.0101. And then I have a market value of 285,000. I have an assessed value of 250,000. What does my formula call for? What does the formula say? I can see mouse.
Assessed.
The formula says assessed. So that market value is our distractor. What does that have to do with the formula you're looking at to solve for taxes? Nothing, right? That's the distractor. And guys, that's how we eliminate distractors, because we know the formula. Again, put them on flashcards, write it down 30 times. It's bound to stick after the first 12 times of repetition. You guys with me? Find your way, your system to learn these formulas. You know, one thing you may want to consider, especially as you're practicing and learning, whenever you see a math problem, go ahead and write down the formula. Write down that your T-bar for taxes, because that's got you writing it an extra time. And then you can see it so you know where to work for it. You guys look stuff up. This is the opportunity to look stuff up until test day. So please don't feel like you need to know this formula today. You've got to learn this formula before the test. Utilize it to get yourselves ready. Does this make sense? So we've completed our T-bar. The up-down line means multiply. So now the last step to find our assessed value, I'm sorry, our taxes, our annual taxes, excuse me. We're going to take our assessed value times 0.0101, which means I get annual taxes. Yep, $2,525. I took my assessed value because that's the number that my formula told me to use. I take that assessed value times my tax rate, and that gives me taxes for this year, $2,525. Questions? Okay. Let's look at another one together. Again, I'll turn you guys loose, let you do some on your own. You need to have fun too. Okay. This one says, again, just read the problem first. Calculate the annual property tax due for property in Forsyth County with a property tax rate of 1.01 per 100, a market value of 127,000, and an assessed value of 85% of market value. So first thing, one of the first things we want to do is identify my X. What am I solving for? Because that is all I care about. I know my formula. I know I can use a T-bar. So we have our tax rate, 1.01 per 100. Again, 1.01 per 100, 0.0101. So my tax rate. Then I have a market value of 127,000. I have assessed value of 85% of market value. So again, which one does my formula call for? My formula tells me to use the assessed value. Do I know that number? Not yet. But what do know? It's 85% of market value. What's that word of mean? Multiply. So how do I find my assessed value? I take my market value of or times 85%. So market value times 85% tells me that my assessed value, 85% of market value. Questions on how I got either number for the T-bar? Last step is to solve for X. Up down line means multiply. So if I have 107,950 times 0.0101, what is my assessed value? 1,090. That's 90. So my annual taxes this year are going to be $1,090.30.
And Julie, you always round up.
So yeah, they say with rounding, go out at least 3 decimal points until you get to the very end. So since this is my last calculation, now I'm going to take that 0.295 and round it to 0.30. You guys can't, and that's a good question. Thank you. You guys cannot miss a problem by rounding alone. So in other words, what I mean by that, remember your entire exams, both of your exams are multiple choice. And if you round differently than me, if you got 0.29 instead of 0.30, both of those answer choices are not going to be on the exam. They're not going to give you 0.29 and 0.30. So if you get 0.29, you can look at that, the answer choices, and see that 0.30 is close enough. Does that make sense? You can't miss by rounding alone. It's not, as long as you're not getting carried away with your rounding. Go out at least 2 or 3 decimal places. Other questions on this one? Okay. One more, and then I'm going to let you guys do one. This is just showing us a different way to work the T-bar. So this problem says, what is the assessed value of a property that's located in Kernersville? Tax rate of 0.85 per 100, annual tax bill of $3,371. So the previous problems we saw for annual taxes, yes? This time we're solving for our assessed value. So again, just showing us any variable on the T-bar is a candidate. You could, any of these could be your X. So now, because we know our formula, we're solving for the assessed value, which is the bottom right. I know my annual taxes are $33.71, and I know my tax rate is 0.85 per 100. And that gives me a rate 0.0085. The back fourth line in the T-bar means to divide. So on your not so smart calculators, you take 33.71, divide it by 0.0085, and we get our assessed value. So for tax purposes, this property was assessed at $396,588.23, give or take. Up down line in the T-bar means multiply. Back fourth line means divide. Questions? You guys are just ready to do one on your own, aren't you? All right, I actually got 2. So I'll give you guys just a few minutes, and then of course we'll talk together. So if you get stuck, just hang tight. We'll talk together and get you unstuck. You guys go ahead, before we look at this problem, go ahead and set your chats to private. Because I want all of you, once you've had a few minutes to work it, I want all of you to tell me in a private chat, A, B, C, or D. And that's all you need to tell me, A, B, C, or D. Yeah, that's good, Ashley. That's good. Thank you. All right, everybody ready? Trying to create excitement and anticipation. Are we ready? All right, here you go. On your own, A, B, C, or D, and we'll work it together. You guys about one more minute and then we'll talk about it. Good, good. Okay. Talk about it, see what we got. So we see a math problem. What's the very first thing we do? Get super excited and pick our calculator up and start hitting a bunch of buttons? No. First thing we're going to do is just read. Read and breathe. Breathe and read. All right. Current market value of a property is 135,000. For tax purposes, it is assessed at 60% of market value. The tax rate is 2.45 per $100 of assessed value. What is the annual tax liability? So first off, let's identify what's the only thing I care about in this problem. The only thing I care about is this year's taxes. If it doesn't get me to my annual tax liability, I don't care about it. That's what we mean by knowing the formula to eliminate distractors. That is my only focus for this problem. Everybody good with that? Okay, so now we know what my focus is. I also know I can use a T-bar, and I know what I'm solving for. My annual tax liability is the number on top. So I have an market value of 135,000. It's assessed at 60% of market value. There's that word of again. What's that tell me to do? Tells me to multiply. Yep. So you take your market value, 135,000 times 60%. And I get an assessed value of 81,000. And then I have a tax rate of 2.45 per 100. So 2 per 100 gives me a tax rate of 0.0245, which is what goes here. Last step, up, down line in the T-bar means to multiply. So I take my 81,000 times 0.0245. And we get a rounded assessed value of $1,985 or fee. By the way, a couple of you, I appreciate you guys being my guinea pigs. A couple of you didn't do the 60%. You used 135 as an assessed value, and guess what? If you worked it that way, that was an option. That was an answer choice. So again, reiterating the importance of understanding these formulas. They're going to have answer choices banking on you calculating wrong. So when you see a right answer when you see an answer that you got, that still doesn't mean that it's a right answer. Does that make sense? So it all goes back to knowing that formula. Awesome. One of you just said you see where you went wrong, and that's what we're asking for is introduction. We're just introducing you guys to this math. So if you make a mistake, if you did it wrong, that's okay. Do you see now where you went wrong? Because that's how we learn. And like I said, you guys, never worry about math practice. I got you covered. So I'll show you in just a second where we got some extra math. You can work on that this weekend to make sure you secure this. Questions on how we got C?
Julie, I got C after the second round. So I'm not sure I realized that 60%. I was like, ah, crap. But I kind of went about it a different way, and I don't want to confuse anybody, but I got the assessed value to 81,000,
Mhm.
and then I divided that by 100,
Mhm.
and then multiplied by 2.45. I mean, that gets
Yep.
you there the exact same way. My brain just thinks like that instead of looking at
Perfect.
that decimal there.
And that's part of the fun of math, Graham, is that all of our brains see it differently. So
Right.
if you see it different than me, if the T-bar doesn't work, if you see it different, it makes no difference to me how you get to C, just get to C.
Okay.
So as long
All
as
right.
you got C, perfect. Did anybody else? I hated, oh my gosh, back in high school, let's go back in time for a minute. Did anybody else ever get points deducted from math tests and homework because you didn't work the problem the same way the teacher did? You got the right answer, but you didn't take the same steps. Was that the most infuriating thing ever? That's past us now. I don't care how you get the right answer. I don't care what your scratch paper says. I don't care if you go, my answer is C. As long as you get C, you're good to go. So
Hey,
I just
Julie-
work easier without the decimals. It's easier for me to get it to a solid number like that.
awesome.
I have a
Perfect.
question, if you don't mind. When
Please.
when we take the test, whether for you or the real test, they're gonna initially right away give us scratch paper, correct?
Mhm.
Are you allowed right away to because you're gonna have formulas and T-bars in your head? Can you write them all down on the paper? That's not cheating, right?
As soon as the exam begins, blank paper stays blank until the exam begins. And once the exam begins, you can do whatever you want
Okay.
to with your scratch paper.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on this one? That's right. That's right. All those formulas you sat in the car at the last minute, memorized. Once that test begins, go ahead and spit them out, brain dump it. Go ahead and spit it out or whatever it is that you're worried about you're going to forget. That's something you want to spit out on a piece of paper when you begin. Yep. All right. One more. You guys ready? Private chat. Tell me in a private chat, A, B, C, or D. Looks like a few of you may want to read the question again. See what it's asking. You got one more minute and then we'll talk about it. They got you. It's a mistake we make once, right? Get it out of your system now. Not the truth. All right, do we get something? Something. So let's see what we got. First thing we're going to do is just read. Market value of a house is $84,500. Taxes are assessed at 35% of market value. The tax rate is 30 mils. What are the, dang you question, what are the monthly taxes? How do I get to monthly? Well, my formula gets me to annual, right? And this is one of these where I got to take an extra step. So first we have to solve for annual taxes because that's what my formula tells me. That's what I know. I have a market value of 84,000. Taxes are assessed at 35% of market value. So we're going to take our market value, 84,500, times it by 35%. And we get 84 times 35%, and we get $29,575. That is our assessed value. 35% of market value. And then I have 30 mils. And a mil is a factor of what? 1,000. So we just take 30, divide it by 1,000. And I get 0.03 mils, which is my tax rate that goes here. Up, down line in the T-bar means to multiply. So 29,575 times 0.03 gives me annual taxes of 887.25. This may be a good lesson. Once you guys think you have an answer, particularly with the math, once you think you have an answer, why don't you go back and look at the problem again and make sure the answer you have is what they're asking for. If you put down A, are you right or wrong? Wrong. And it's not because you don't know what you're doing. It's just because you didn't divide by 12. So make that mistake one time and learn from that mistake, you guys. This is how we learn. So now that we have annual taxes, now we take that last step, divide by 12, and that gives me rounded, nope, taxes of $73.94. This is how, I'm glad it got some of you. Hopefully it won't get you again. Like I said, you guys, I know math isn't the preferred. I'm rare. I enjoy math, and I understand if we were in person, you'd probably feel the need to throw rotten tomatoes at me at this point. Math is my thing, and I understand math may not be your thing, and that's fine. Knowing the formulas, understanding the T-bar, reading the problem. These are things that you can do to help yourself. And sometimes with the math, you got to make mistakes so you can learn. That's how we learn. All right. Do I have any T-bar fans? Not everybody yet. That's okay. That's all right. If I haven't gotten you yet, I will. Don't worry. Don't worry. We got time. Questions on this one? All right. That wraps up Unit 3. So you got those key terms back at the beginning of Unit 3. I'd have to see that problem, Sabrina, if you could send that to me. So your key terms on page 51, pre-licensing 101, know what the words mean. You got a glossary in the back of your book. You got the words in the unit. You guys also have Google. Look the word up. You got your key point review, pages 65 to 67, your checklist, kind of your summary of the unit. And then you have your student quiz. It starts on page 68. There is some of this math in the student quiz on page 68. So you get some practice there. Each unit that we do math, that unit has a math concepts. So the math concepts for Unit 3 starts on page 63. And it gives you another explanation of the math. It gives you examples. Guys, turn with me real quick to page 64. And you can see on page 64, it gives you some explanations. And then you guys see it talks about example 1, example 2, example 3. You guys see that on page 64? We don't read math, we do math. So another way for you guys to get practice, another way for you to see this, do not sit there and read example 1 to yourself. When you see example 1, pick up your pencil, pick up your calculator, and do example 1. That allows you to see it in your style, your format, and it gives you more practice. So we're not going to read math, we're going to do math. I also wanted to introduce you guys, if you are using the updated book, starting on page 865, if you don't have the updated book, I'll get you a page number in just a second. But if you're using the updated book, starting on page 865, you will find 50 additional math problems. Now, those 50 problems starting on page 865, I call those like 201. If you can do those 50 problems in the back of the book, you're good for your exam. And what I've done is we do math in class. I've gone to those 50 problems in the back of the book and I've identified the number or numbers that relate to the math that we just did to give you guys that extra practice. So once you look, once you do the end of the unit, once you look in the online 803, thank you. Thank you. It's on page 803 if you don't have the updated book. So once you've done the end of unit, once you've done the online learning system, which we'll look at, if you want to see, give yourself another practice. Now this unit only has 1. We'll start seeing more as we get into others. Understand this now about the math. And one thing you're going to hear me say over and over and over again. When it comes to the math, practice, practice, practice. If you just sat in class with me and said, oh, this is easy, I got it, try it on your own. Because guys, it's really easy to watch me do it. It's really easy to watch me do it. I need to know if you guys can do it on your own. So that's why we have all this practice. So page 865, 803, if you're using the old book, number 22 relates to the math that we just did. I got one more thing to say about math and taxes and everything, but we also need to take a break. So let's take 10. We come back. We're going to finish up Unit 3, officially finish Unit 3. And then we're going to play a game. So if you don't have your phone, grab your phone because you need your phone to play a game. So let's take 10. We come back, we keep going. And we're back. So I'm going to take attendance. And let's see, a couple things to wrap this up. First off, let's look in the online learning system, specifically in the Unit 3 material. So there's a couple extra quizzes for you guys here. And then there's a property tax math worksheet. So this gives you some additional practice. We've included the solutions as well. Don't study the solutions, that's not going to help you. Just use the solutions to help you determine if you got the answer right or wrong. I have taken attendance, so if you just turn your camera back on, please let me know in a chat so I can make sure I give you credit for this hour. The other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about in Unit 3, please turn with me, if you will, in your books to page 62. If you are using an old book, it's page 61. So 61 or 62. But what you're looking at 61 or 62 are some proration scenarios. They do introduce you guys to proration. That's what we were talking about earlier about buyers and sellers sharing this year's property taxes. In real estate words, we say that that is prorating taxes. So they give you some scenarios. You're going to see some proration problems in this practice. Guys, we're not going to actually talk about prorating and pick up our calculator until we get to Unit 21. So when we get to Unit 21, we're going to revisit pages 61 and 62. So I just point that out. You're going to see it. You're going to come across it. You can either attempt it, see how you do, or just put it off to the side and know that we will get to it when we get to Unit 21. Questions on Unit 3? You guys survived your first math. You should like pat yourselves on the back or something. We're just getting started. Good news is we break the math up into set chunks. So you can get your practice in on property tax math this weekend. Next weekend, we got some more math for you. Or next week, we'll do some more math. Questions? Y'all want to play a game? Yay! All right, y'all grab your phones. Does anybody know Kahoot? A what now? A Kahoot. So a Kahoot is kind of an interactive game. You guys are going to play on your phone. The easiest, quickest way to get to a Kahoot is to scan the QR code. Scanning the QR code will get you into this Kahoot. Once you scan the QR code, it's going to ask you for your name. I'm okay if you use nicknames for Kahoot. If you don't scan the QR code, you do have some options. You can download the Kahoot app, or you can go to the Kahoot's website, which you're looking at up here. If you access via the website or an app, you need a game pin. This Kahoot's game pin is 592511. Welcome back. And again, if you're going the app or the website route, you put your game pin in, it's going to ask you for a name. So while we're letting everybody in, let's talk about what the heck a Kahoot is. Once you're in, your screen is not saying anything on your phone. So don't try to do anything with your phone right now. It's just sitting still. In just a minute, when we get everybody in, I'm going to put a question up on the screen. We're going to read the question, and then the screen, my screen, is going to show you 4 answer choices. There's going to be a red answer, a blue answer, a green answer, and kind of this weird mustard color answer. Once the answer choices are available on the computer screen, you'll be able to see them on your phone and select which one you think it is. Is it the red one, blue one, green one, or weird mustard color? You're the only one that's going to know what you answer. Once everybody answers, we're going to get an overall class response. It's going to show us how many answered each question. That's a good opportunity for us to address things, get some some firm on some things we might be confused on. I never make you Kahoot. You don't have to play. If you don't want to play on your phone, you don't have to. If you're not going to play on your phone, I ask that you at least play in your mind, because while this is hopefully fun, it's also hopefully helpful as well. Again, to help kind of firm up some of those topics that we've covered. The first Kahoot we're going to do is our units 2 and 3 Kahoot. So 2 and 3. Is everybody in? And if your phone goes to sleep, you go away. So keep your phone awake. Is everybody in that wants to play? Or if you just want to observe this round, again, just play in your mind. We ready? The first question is just kind of so we can explain. Let's go ahead and start. First question, you can kind of see, you still don't see anything on your phone. So our first Kahoot question says the main purpose of the North Carolina Real Estate Commission is, now look at your phones. Did your phone just change? If you think it's protect the public, say red. If you think it's to make money, hit blue. Kahoots are timed. At the end of the time, we'll see the results. And well, look at you guys go. And I was gonna say, once you, unfortunately in Kahoot, once you answer, you can't change your mind. There's no going back. So make sure you answer before you answer. So main purpose of the Real Estate Commission is to do what? Protect the public. How is one way they protect the public? Issuing us our real estate license. It is something that they do, but issuing us our license is not their main purpose. Whether or not they issue a license depends on whether or not you can prove to them that you have the minimum competency to work with their public. And how do you prove that to them? You pass this exam and you pass your state exam. So that's a Kahoot. By the way, thank you everybody for not saying the green one. That is a Kahoot. Once we all answer, we see the answers, and I ask you guys, do you have any questions? Do we have questions on this one? Seriously, that's like an actual. Okay. Once we answer and we see, then Kahoot does a tally. So not only can you get points if you get it right, you also get points if you answer it the fastest. Who answers it the fastest, the right. So Timothy answered it right the fastest, followed by Kiki and Aubrey, Sabrina and Vaughn. I don't want you guys getting bogged down on the scoreboard. It's more important to me that you get the information than it is that you rank on the scoreboard. I also understand I've been in real estate for 22 years and we just naturally have a competitive streak to us. And you guys are a bunch of future real estate agents. You guys got a natural competitive streak to you. So this is where Kahoot gets a little fun. So now you can try to place if you want to. You win when you have the knowledge. That's how you win at Kahoot. How's that sound? And that is a Kahoot. Questions on how the game works? Is this fun? Oh, yeah, it is. You just wait. Okay. All right. Question number 2. And by the way, I usually don't talk during the whole things. The rights of ownership of real property include all the following except. Got about 10 more seconds.
It's Julie.
Uh-huh.
Mine's kicked me off. I can't get in.
You can't get into the Kahoot?
Yeah, I was
Oh.
in it, you know.
I'm sorry. We may just have to plan our minds for this one. We're having Zoom issues today too, so there must something's going on outside of our control. So if you can't, I'm sorry. If you can't play, you can play in your mind. Again, it's more important to me that you guys get it right. So the rights of ownership of real property include all the following except. Remember, our rights of ownership, we're referring to our legal bundle of rights. Our legal bundle of rights, we remember back in Unit 2, specifically page 21, gives us our deep C. Those are our twigs. So we had our disposition twig, our exclusion twig. We have our, what's the other E? Our enjoyment twig, possession twig, and control twig. So which one isn't a right of ownership? Something that is appurtenant. What does it mean if something is appurtenant? It runs with the land. Maybe you purchase property with something with an appurtenance. Maybe you don't. It's not a right. Let's see. Somebody says if you go to the website, you still got the game pin down here, so you could try to get back in that way. Not quite sure why Kahoot and maybe Zoom aren't cooperating with us today. Questions on this one? You guys can still see me, right? On my screen and hear me. Okay. Cool. Questions on this one? Legal bundle of rights. All right. Scoreboard changed up a bit. Timothy's still going to stay on top. Kiki's still on and Aubrey. Victoria D is on the board. Sabrina's still on. Cameron's our highest climber, up 12 places this round. You might even have a little picture of a summit on your phone. Question number 3. The rights of the owner of property located along the banks of a small stream are called. Ten seconds. These are our riparian rights. Riparian water rights are bodies of water without a tide. Littoral rights are body of water with a tide. One thing that may help you, if you see the word riparian, you see that RI in riparian, we spell river using an RI, right? So riparian and river are bodies of waters without a tide. Littoral rights are bodies of water with a tide. Subjacent support rights and lateral support rights are our support rights. We have the right, if somebody wants to dig under your property to mine the coal, for example, or to frack, you have the right to have your property supported, not fall in. Lateral support means you have the right beside your property. So if your neighbor starts digging, they shouldn't affect your support rights. Questions on this one? Timothy's, Kiki are the ones to beat y'all. Victoria D's up, Sabrina's up, Grace is on the board. G is our highest climber this round. Good job, G. Question number 4. A brother and sister cannot concurrently own real estate in North Carolina as seconds. Brother and sister cannot own property as tenants by the entirety. Who's tenants by the entirety set aside for? People that are married. And in North Carolina, brother and sister can't be married because, you know, ew. So brother and sister could buy property. They could either go tenants in common or joint tenants, depending on how they want to set that up. Questions on this one? See what we got. Timothy and Kiki, Victoria D and Sabrina are staying put. Vaughn's up on the board. Yuli's our highest climber this round. Question number 5, which of the following is a lien on real estate? Which is the lien? Ten seconds. When you see the word lien, see the word loan. If you have a lien on your property, it's because you owe somebody some money. With a mortgage, who you owe money to? The lender. They're the ones that gave you the money to buy the property. They're going to have a lien. Easements, encroachments, covenants, mortgages, these are all encumbrances. Just about everything we talked about in Unit 3 is an encumbrance. It affects the title somehow. But specifically, the mortgage is the lien. Questions on this one? So we got Timothy and Kiki, Sabrina's up, Vaughn's up, Victoria D's still on. 3 of you have hit your answer streak. You're on fire. You may have the little fire symbol on your phone, if that's you. And the last one, real property taxation in North Carolina. Ten seconds. Real property taxation in North Carolina says the tax bill is due and payable September 1st. Is that kind of messed up? We got a lien on our property before I get a bill, before I have the opportunity to pay my taxes. How about that? That's what the taxation timetable teaches us. Property's got to be listed by January 31st. Penalties after January 5th the next year. And our reassessment, octennial reassessment, is every 8 years. Questions on this? And last thing, we get our final podium. So we get to see who our first, second, and third place winners are. So our third place is Sabrina. Our second place is Timothy. Uh-oh. There's our competition, which means our first place is Kiki. Look who came back at the last second there. Yay. I got fourth and fifth runners up of Dee and Vaughn. Good Kahoot. What do we think about Kahoot? Yay? Nay? Yay? Good. We'll Kahoot more, not every class and not after every unit. I think if it was up to you guys, I would conduct my entire class via Kahoot. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. So we will Kahoot. Again, it's a good opportunity for us, for you, to make sure you have this material, these little things. Obviously, Kahoot is not substituting for the quizzes in the book or the online learning system. This is just an opportunity for us to kind of take a break and a big deep breath before we go on to the next. Questions? All right. We are getting into Unit 4. Oh, one more thing to say before that, sorry. They've studied how adults learn. Adults' brains are different than children, so we learn a little bit different than children. And the learning pyramid kind of re-emphasizes the idea of you guys practicing the math, practicing on your own, which is why we give you guys the extra worksheets in the online learning system. You see how much of the math you just retained by watching me? But do you see how much that grows when you do it on your own? So practicing on your own again, even if you sat in class in the first hour and said, whatever, Julie, I got that. Great, good for you. Why don't you try it on your own just to make sure you're there? So when it comes to math, y'all get used to me saying this. Practice, 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 practice. Questions, comments? Okay. Unit 4. We're going to talk about some property descriptions, different ways that we can identify property lines. We're going to talk about the survey in Unit 4. So in this unit, we're going to describe the legal descriptions. We're going to explain the importance of a survey. And then we have some calculations at the end of Unit 4. However, I may be mean, but I'm not cruel. I'm not going to make us do 2 maths in one class. We've already done a math today. So we're going to cover the legal descriptions and the survey in Unit 4, and then we're going to skip the math for now. When we come together Tuesday morning, guess what we're going to start with Tuesday morning? Unit 4 math. Is that helpful? I like to break it down for you guys. This gives you the opportunity to get caught up on Unit 3 math. And then next week, we'll do the Unit 4 math. Fair enough? Okay. So we'll skip the math for now, but let's talk about our legal descriptions in our survey. The legal description tells us it describes the property. It tells us the parameters of the property. It describes the land. It doesn't talk about the improvements. So the legal description doesn't talk about the property or the fence or the shed. It just tells us the property lines. The only way to get a legal property description is to have a survey done. We're going to talk about the importance of having a survey done in just a second. Surveyors may use one of 4 different methods to determine the legal description. So the first method used to determine the legal description is something called meets and bounds. Meets and bounds is what we use here in North Carolina. We are one of the original 13 colonies, and we still use the meets and bounds description. Meets and bounds description is like a tour of the parameter of the property. So you start and end at the point of beginning. And you make your way around the property by meets and bounds, by calls, if you will. So many feet east, so many feet west or south, so many feet west, so many feet north. It's a tour of the perimeter of the property. Monuments tell the surveyor where to turn. So for example, it might say something like 90 feet east. How do you know where to turn? You're going to put a monument in the ground. If the surveyor can use a natural monument, such as a lake or a rock or a tree, they will. If there's not a natural monument available, then they may put their own down. Have you ever seen a stake with a little pink flag on it? Telltale sign that a surveyor has been there. They can use their own monuments. So this idea of the point of beginning and our monuments and calls, meets and bounds. If we start at the point of beginning, so right up here is our point of beginning, the surveyor is going to take a tour around the property. So the surveyor in this case is going to go southeast 80 feet, and then they're going to have a monument that's going to tell them to turn. Then they come southwest 150 feet, hit a monument, tells them to turn. Whatever these are, I'm not a surveyor. Tell them to turn until they get back to the point of beginning. All they're doing is taking a tour around the perimeter. Look with me in your books, if you will, on page 73. And on page 73, you have another picture using the point of beginning. This surveyor had Red Skull Creek they could use as a property line. They didn't have to draw their own, but again, same idea. You guys see that verbiage above the picture? It says a tract of land located in blank blank described as follows. You guys see that? That's surveyor speak. That's surveyor language. That's what the surveyor uses to describe the property lines, the legal description for this property on 4.1. You and I are not in surveyor school. We're in real estate school. So we're not trying to interpret this. We're not looking at our buyers and going, oh yeah, this is where your property line is because I know what this means. Not my job. Stay in your lane. Your buyers and sellers have questions about the legal description on their survey. We need to encourage them to talk to the surveyor. So the surveyor performs the meets and bounds, kind of a tour of the property. We'll talk a little bit more about the surveyor in just 1 minute. Questions on meets and bounds. North Carolina, number 1. Another method that surveyors may use to determine the legal description is called the Rectangular Government Survey System. This is also known as a grid system. We don't do the government survey system this side of the Mississippi. Does this look like our topography? Does this look like the Piedmont Triad or our oceans or our mountains? The government rectangular survey system, the grid system, is to determine properties west of the Mississippi. Have you ever flown to Vegas and looked out the window? It's pretty much what you're looking at once you got over the Mississippi, right? Or anywhere out west. So the rectangular government survey system consists of a grid system. They use north-south lines, which are referred to as meridians, east-west lines that are referred to as base. There are a few numbers for the rectangular government survey system that you need to know. The rectangular government survey system consists of townships, and we'll look at a picture in just a second. Each township has 36 sections. Each section has 640 acres. These look like pretty good candidates for a flashcard for me. What do you guys think? So let's look at page 76 in our books. And the first thing we have on page 76 is our township. So you can see the township is broken down into 36 sections. Each section contains 640 acres. So the first thing we're looking at is our township. They say that when you're counting sections in a township, you count like you're plowing a field. Now, I don't know about you, but I myself have never personally plowed a field. However, if I were to plow a field, it would make sense. You guys see section 1 is in the top right. And we go from right to left, don't we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you come down to section 7, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, come down to 13. Isn't that how you plow a field? You go one side, down the other, down the other, down the other. If we were to take section 16 and blow it up, section 16 has 640 acres. And if we were to zoom in and study section 16, that's what we are looking at the bottom of page 76. So within section 16, it is owned by those number of owners with their acres. So the grid system breaks it down even further. There is math in this unit, specifically on page 77. There's a math shortcut, and then there's reading a rectangular survey description. Good news, that's math you guys no longer need to worry about. That's the kind of math we like, right? So you may want to go ahead and cross that out. There's a math shortcut on page 77. And the rectangular survey description, that's not math that we're going to do. What do you need to know about the rectangular government survey? There's 36 sections in a township. Each section has 640 acres. Marina, did that work this time? We're having all sorts of technical issues today, aren't we? And guys, every time you run into, so we're just logging out, logging back in, it seems to fix it. So I don't know what's going on today. So government rectangular survey system is our second method, the surveyor's second method for determining property lines. A third method for the legal description is to reference to a recorded plat. A recorded plat map. Recorded plat maps are things that we usually see in subdivisions. So if there's a plat map available in North Carolina, we can use the plat map to help us identify the property lines. There's an example on page 78 of a plat map. You see you got your cul-de-sac. Lot 1 is at the top left, and you can see lot 1. The plat map gives you the property lines, the property dimensions. Lot 2 is next to it. 3 and 4 come down to 5 at the end of the cul-de-sac there, back out to the road for lots 6, 7, and 8. So we have the property lines for all 8 lots. Those dotted lines in the plat map, those are your easements. So the plat map identifies your water easement, for example, power easement. Where do you have pipes and lines running? Again, in North Carolina, if the plat map is available, then it can be used to determine the legal description. You're not going to find a plat map downtown. So if it's not available, meets and bounds is going to be the preferred method. If it is available, let's say you are the agent helping the buyer buy, I don't care, lot 3. and your buyer is buying lot 3 and they have questions about the plat map, they have questions about the lines, are these accurate, are these right? Our best bet is to encourage them to have a meets and bounds. So we can refer to the plat map, but if they still have questions, if they're still not sure, we may want to recommend they consider having a meets and bounds done to get the true accurate. So plat maps can be used when available. The fourth method for determining the legal description, we don't use much anymore. And this is referring to a previously recorded deed. Deeds should have legal descriptions in them. Not all do, though, apparently. There was a time in our history that we got really lazy. And under the legal description in the deed, we would say something like, see previously recorded deed. So then you spend all this time, all this research finding the previously recorded deed. And guess what that legal description said? See previously recorded deed. How far back here do we have to go? This was our fault, you guys, not agents, not attorneys, not consumers, everybody in general. We got lazy. So we've learned the errors of our ways. We're seeing legal descriptions more. But again, this isn't the most reliable, the most accurate method. Good question comes in. Plat maps are not 100% accurate. Actually, they're pretty point on. This is if you have a buyer that's questioning it. If your buyer's questioning it, we may want to suggest, because you're going to look at them and say that's right. And once, you know, people, once they make their mind up, they know that it's wrong, right? So how do we resolve this? Maybe you just have a meets and bounds done. Now you got two opinions to see for yourselves. That makes sense? So can we rely on plat maps? Absolutely. If your buyers question it, we want to help them get their questions resolved. Questions on the 4 different methods for determining legal description. Legal descriptions properties may come with an informal reference. The street address is the most common example of an informal reference. Street address alone is not sufficient. In addition to the street address, we want legal descriptions. Again, back to the surveyor speak on page 73. Sometimes you guys, the street address and the mailing address are not the same. When you get out to rural areas, you may have the street address is like Route 8 something, and then you have a mailing address. So one reason why street addresses are informal, sometimes streets change too, don't they? Sometimes we rename streets, sometimes we renumber streets. So we cannot rely on these for accuracy. The general rule of thumb says when you're conveying property, the street address alone is not sufficient. A listing contract and a lease are not documents used to convey. By convey, I mean transferring property from one owner to another. So a listing agreement and a lease do not convey. The sales contract is a document that's used to convey. We look at one of our sales contracts in Unit 10. And in Unit 10, when we look at our sales contract, we're going to see that it asks for the street address, but then it also wants the legal description. So street address is used, but alone it's not sufficient. Let's talk about our surveyor. There's our little pink flag. Good telltale sign that a surveyor's been around. A surveyor, a licensed surveyor, is the only one that can prepare and interpret a survey. And surveys are best to find property lines, property boundaries, locations of buildings, improvements on the property. If it's within the property lines, an improvement, it's going to convey, it's considered a pertinent. What are the lot dimensions and the acreage? That's math that we're going to do first thing Tuesday morning. Legal access to the road. How do you access the property? Surveys can also help us identify easements, encroachments. We're going to talk about title insurance in Unit 5. Surveys can help us identify flood hazards. When buyers buy, when they're under contract to purchase a home, buyers should be encouraged to have a survey done. We always want to encourage our buyers. Let me ask you guys something. With my real estate license, does that give me the power to make people do stuff? Can I start bossing people around and saying, do I have that kind of power? Boy, don't I wish. However, with my real estate license, I can't make anybody do anything. So the best I can do is recommend a survey, talk about the importance of a survey. If my buyer chooses not to have a survey done, that's on them. I want you guys to write down something really big for me. Get you a fresh piece of paper, write it down super big. Everybody ready? I got 2 words for you. Everybody ready? Document everything. Document every single thing. So if you have a conversation with your buyer about the importance of a survey and why they should consider having a survey done, is that a conversation you want to document? You better believe it. If this conversation's face-to-face or on the phone, I want you to go home and send an email talking about per our conversation. This is why I think you should have a survey done. Because the last thing I want to happen to you guys is your buyer face-to-face conversation or on the phone, and the buyer says, I don't want a survey. After closing, something happens, and now the buyer's discovered something that's going to cause an issue for them that could have been resolved had they had a survey done. Is that buyer going to say, oh, my agent tried to tell me the importance of it? Maybe. More than likely, that buyer's going to say, you didn't tell me. And if you don't have your documentation, you guys, somebody just said it in the chat, thank you. If you don't document it, you didn't do it. If you don't document it, it didn't happen. So having conversations, various things such as the importance of a survey. Bottom line is the buyer's decision of whether or not they should have a survey done or not. And guys, I'll be honest, it's been my experience. Most of my buyers have declined the survey. I think a lot of times buyers think they're saving money. Maybe. I mean, you're getting ready to buy a house. I don't know what $600, $800, $1,500 is in the big picture of buying a house, but it's been my experience, a lot of buyers, and I think it's because they don't understand the importance, and that's why they have us, is to help them understand. Guys, I'm telling you right now, people don't understand property lines. I cannot tell you how many times I've been with a buyer showing property, and we've been in the backyard, and I've talked to the buyer about the importance of a survey, and the buyer said, Julie, you see that fence? That fence tells me where my property line is. I don't need to have a survey done. You know what I know when I see a fence? Somebody put a fence there. Did they have a survey done before they put it there? I don't know. Is it in the property lines? I don't know. All I know is, oh, look, there's a fence. Hey, look, there's a shed. Is it an encroachment? I don't know. All I know is there's a fence, there's a shed, there's a piece, there's an improvement. If it looks awfully close to the property line. I've had a buyer look at me once. Can't make this stuff up. I was talking about a survey and a buyer said, Julie, I can see the mow line. Okay. How do we know they didn't hire the 14-year-old down the street to come mow? Do you think that 14-year-old studied the survey before they showed up with their lawnmower? No. So again, you guys, this comes up. I can't make anybody do anything. We're going to talk about title insurance in the next unit and why that's an important with a survey. Yeah, it's just I'm getting things in the chat. Sometimes the seller sometimes you may get your hands on a survey when you're buying. Maybe the seller is willing to release theirs when they bought. There's no requirement though. It's a super nice seller. But either way, you're still encouraged to have your own when you buy because monuments move. Sometimes the stakes come down, sometimes trees fall down, right? Sometimes rocks roll away, monuments move. So all buyers are encouraged. And if somebody's saying you want to put a fence up, you may want to have that surveyed before you put the fence up. So anytime there's any kind of question about the property lines, where are the property lines? What's in and out of the property lines? That's when we need to know to encourage our buyers and sellers to bring in a surveyor so they know for sure. So when it comes to the land description and surveys, let's talk about our role. And our role and responsibility with surveys, only licensed surveyors can offer an opinion about the survey. Only licensed surveyors can interpret the survey, can interpret the legal description. We are not writing legal descriptions. We are not interpreting legal descriptions. That is the job of the surveyor. Again, we're teaching you guys to stay in your lane. You get out the business, you start working with buyers and sellers, and you get your hands on a couple surveys and you study them and you think you know what you're doing, but guess what? You're still not a licensed surveyor. So stay, unless you are. Is anybody a licensed surveyor? No? Okay. So we are not. Let them do their job. You do your job and let them do theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like as a broker, like after you get your license and stuff, like is it allowed to get your basically to become a surveyor?
Sure. Sure. You could wear multiple licenses. I think a good rule of thumb, Haley, you get to wear one hat per transaction. So if you're a licensed surveyor and a real estate agent, you need to decide what hat you want to wear in this transaction. Are you helping the buyer seller, or are you surveying the property? Does that make sense? I know a lot of agents are also a licensed home inspector or general contractor. So again, if you have multiple hats, the general rule of thumb is one hat per transaction.
See, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions on our survey? Legal descriptions? Unit 4 is really short and sweet to the point. So the only other thing I have left to cover in Unit 4 is the math, which again, we'll do first thing Tuesday morning. I do want to go ahead and give you a teaser. There's a number we're going to work with first thing Tuesday morning, and I want you guys to spend this weekend memorizing this number for me. Everybody ready? That number I want you to memorize is 43,560. We're going to spend some time with this number on Tuesday. Every single acre has 43,560 square feet. So we're going to spend some time using this number to convert square feet to acres, acres to square feet. Put this thing on a flashcard. Most licensees will tell you how we learn this number is by remembering 4 little old ladies driving 35 and a 60. Have we all been behind them before? 4 on a 2-lane road, double yellow line, 4 little old ladies driving 35 and a 60. Do I have any NASCAR fans? Surely we do. I mean, we're in NASCAR country. So yeah, surely we do. I think I'm baseball, I'm not NASCAR. I think it's is it Petty that's 43? Is that Petty's number? So if Petty 43 drives 56, he'll win 0 races. If you're a NASCAR fan and that helps. If Petty number 43 drives 56 miles per hour, how many races is he going to win? 0. I don't care how you memorize this number. Where are my math people? 4 plus 3 is 7. 5 plus 6 is 11. You think of the gas station, that may help you too. I don't care. Just memorize the number. When we log in on Tuesday, I'm going to ask you guys to tell me in a chat this number. And every single one of you is going to say 43,560. Fair? All right. That's all we're going to do for Unit 4 today. So let's go ahead and take our break. When we come back, we are jumping into Unit 5. Welcome back. I put our 4 little old ladies in the chat, in case you didn't hear it. Again, if that helps you, 4 little old ladies driving 35 and a 60. So you can have that there. And again, that's where we're going to start on Tuesday. So we are back. I'm going to go ahead and take attendance. Right. We are skipping the rest of 4 for now, and we're going to jump into Unit 5. Unit 5, we're going to talk about transfer of title to real property. A lot of what we talk about in Unit 5 is kind of the attorney's responsibility, but it helps us better understand this process. Again, we're the ones assisting our buyers and sellers through the transaction. So us having an understanding of this process and understanding of what the attorney does will help us with our buyers and sellers. So in this unit, we're going to talk about different methods for transferring title. We're going to talk about the deed. We have different types of deeds. And we're going to talk about the essential elements of our deeds. We're going to explain the attorney's process of examining the title and recording. And then the last little piece is to talk about something called excise tax. So before we get into this, please turn with me, if you will, to page 86. And there's a chart at the bottom of page 86 that I want you guys to make note of, because this is going to help us identify the roles, the people. We've mentioned the grantor and the grantee. This unit, we're going to officially meet them. We're going to spend more time with them. The grantor is the person that gave you the property, that sold you the property. The grantee is the person that receives it. You guys see on that chart at the bottom, page 86, and it says giver and receiver. I want you to do me a big favor. Over the word giver, I want you to write a big OR. Over the word receiver, I want you to write an EE, double E. When we're referring to the grantor, we're referring to the giver of the deed. When we're referring to the grantee, we're referring to the receivee of the deed. This will probably be the last time in class you hear me say giver and receiver. Going forward, you're going to hear me say give or and receive E. We need to pay attention to those ORs and EEs. Now, simplify this. The person giving the deed is the seller. The person receiving the deed is the buyer. Yes? Guess what? It is way too easy to say buyer and seller on your test. What words are they going to give you? Grantor and grantee. So use that chart. And again, as we continue, we get to units 10, we're going to talk about the offer and the counter offer. So we're going to talk about the offeror and the offeree. And 14, we're going to talk about the mortgagor and the mortgagee. We're going to mention options, installment land contracts, etc. So this chart just gives us an idea, but we need to start paying attention to those ORs and EEs. So everybody have your note? Giver and receivee. So, Unit 5. Unit 5 is all about title and deed. So first off, let's talk about the difference, and quite frankly, they're the same thing. The title is the right you have to ownership. Title is the idea of ownership. The deed is your documentary evidence. Don't you want proof that you are the owner of record? Don't you want something tangible that you can touch to say, I own this property? And that's what the deed gives us, the documentary evidence. So the title is the idea of ownership. Title is supported by the deed, the documentary evidence. And we're going to talk about both in this unit. But both title and deed represents the bundle of legal rights, an owner's bundle of legal rights, deep C. and they protect owners from third parties. Somebody may show up and lay claim to your land. How do you protect yourself? With the deed. You can prove that you are the owner of record. So talking first, talking about our title again, the idea, the deed is the documentary evidence. So we have a couple of different methods on how title deed can be conveyed, how we can transfer title and deed. And the first method that we're going to talk about transferring title is to do so voluntarily. You're choosing to sell your property or you're choosing to gift it. Alienation refers to separating yourself. So if you're going to transfer your title via voluntary alienation, that means you chose to separate yourself from the property. And when you are transferring title via voluntary alienation, the document that you're going to use to transfer that title is the deed. So we're going to spend some time talking about the deed and different types of deeds. So first off, we're introducing you to the idea of essential elements of a valid document. We're going to see essential elements, validity of documents several times. When we're referring to the validity of a document, what we're saying is the one that gets to determine the validity of the document, of any document, is the judge. The judge is the one that gets to determine if a document is valid or not. And when the judge is determined the validity, the judge is looking for essential elements. Essential elements, I always think of essential elements like required ingredients. Has anybody ever baked a cake before? Has anybody ever eaten a cake? Okay, so we all know cake. Perfect. Don't you just need certain ingredients to have a cake? What do you need? You need flour, you need egg, you need an oil, you need water, right? You just got to have certain ingredients. And if you try to bake a cake without flour, can you call it a cake? No, because you're missing one of the required ingredients. And that's what we're talking about with the essential elements. When handed a deed and the judge is asked, is this thing valid? The judge is looking for the required ingredients of a deed. And these are in your book at the top of page 87. You don't want to recreate the wheel. They're already listed there for you. So when the judge is trying to determine the validity of a deed, the judge is looking for these things. The judge is going to require that it be in writing. The judge is going to make sure that the grantor has legal capacity to convey. Who is the grantor? The giver of the deed, also known as the seller. The grantor, so we got to have legal capacity of the grantor. The deed is going to name both parties, grantor and grantee. The deed has to be valid, the deed has to have certain words of conveyance. Words of conveyance are just words from the seller with their promise, their intent to convey the property. So the deed may say something like, I, the grantor, convey the property to the grantee. It has to specify that that's what we're doing. We're conveying the property. There's our legal description that is now found in deeds again. The deed is signed by the grantor. Does the grantee sign the deed? Does the buyer sign the deed? Nah, just the giver of the deed. You guys see in these ORs and EEs? The grantee's responsibility is to receive the deed, to accept the deed. Another thing that we will find in a valid deed is going to be some form of consideration. Consideration is just anything of value in exchange for, in this case, the deed. Very rarely does the deed list the purchase price. So the consideration is the purchase price, but very rarely, I'm still on the slide. We're still talking about the top of page 87. Very rarely, consideration is also on page 87. Very rarely do we list the actual purchase price. So it might just be stated like for $10 paid in good and valuable consideration, like you're seeing in your book. It may say something like for love and affection. If the property is going to be gifted, that would be the consideration. So everybody understand what you're looking at are the essential elements. And when the judge is handed a deed and they're asked the question, is this thing valid or not? This is what the judge is looking for. All right, let's talk about cake again. Is anybody going to want cake for lunch now? Sorry about that. Let's talk about cake again. Do we like to add stuff to our cake? Do we like icing and whipped cream and sprinkles and nuts, right? We just don't like cake, right? We need cake and something, cake and ice cream, cake and icing. So turn with me over to page 88. And on 88, we have our icing and our ice cream. Elements that are not required, but are often there. These are things that we often see, but guys, these are not what the judge is looking for to determine the validity of it. So on page 88, we're looking at our extra items above and beyond. Deeds do not have to be witnessed. They do not have to be witnessed or notarized. They can be, but they don't have to be. Deeds don't have to be dated to be valid. Now, it's going to be rare to find a deed without a date, but again, that's not what the judge is looking for when determining the validity. Deeds don't have to have an statement to the exact amount of consideration, but there does have to be some form of consideration. Deeds don't have to be notarized. The next to last one here is the problem topic. Deeds don't have to be recorded to be valid. Remember, when you see that word valid, think of the judge. When the judge is determining the validity, the judge doesn't care if it's recorded or not. In North Carolina, we have an act called the North Carolina Connor Act. The reason we record deeds is because the Connor Act tells us to, not because the judge requires it for validity. We will talk a little bit more about the Connor Act a little bit later in this unit. And then the last thing there is the deed's not required to be sealed. Sometimes if it's sealed, it kind of like raises the paper and it has like a rough feel to it. You know what I'm talking about? It's like the thick chunka and it embodies the paper. They're not required. Again, it can be there, but it's not required. I think what I would like you guys to do to help you see this, part of your study time this weekend, take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle of it. And on one side of the line, you write the essential elements of a valid deed. And on the other side, you write the elements that are not required, but are often there. You will get test questions asking about the validity of a deed. That's what we're looking at the top of page 87. Everything else is just the extras, the icing, the whipped cream, and the cherry on top. Questions so far? Question comes in. So if it's not recorded, is it valid according to the judge? Yes. If it's not recorded, because that's not something the judge is looking for. The reason we record is because the Connor Act tells us that we have to. Do we record deeds? Shake your head, yes or no. What do you know? Do we record them? Yeah, absolutely. All your deeds. My homeowner's on the call, your deed is on record somewhere. So do we? Yes. It's important that we understand what makes us record. It's not the judge. It's the Connor Act. Everybody see that? Again, we'll talk a little bit more about Connor, your new BFF, in just a bit. Okay. So now we got to talk about a couple different types of deeds. It'd be way too boring just to have one deed, right? So we have several different types of deeds. The deed used the most often is the general warranty deed. Could have several different names. The general warranty deed is what we see in the majority of real estate transactions. The general warranty deed is the best deed for the grantee. Who's the grantee? The receivee.
The buyer.
Is the buyer. So the general warranty deed is the best for the grantee because it puts the biggest degree of liability on the grantor. When the grantor conveys their property using a general warranty deed, they're making warranties or covenants or promises, if you will. If I'm giving you my deed, it's going to come with some promises. And the promises given in the general warranty deed are, again, in your book on page 89. The general warranty deed comes with a promise or a covenant of cessation and the right to convey. The grantor is promising the grantee that I am the legal owner of record and I have the right to convey my property to you. There's no limitations. There's nothing that's going to encumber it. There's nothing that's going to stop me from conveying. So that's one promise. I'm the legal owner and I have the right to convey. There's a covenant against encumbrances. So any liens on the property, covenants, anything that we talked about in Unit 3, if there are any encumbrances, for example, liens on the property, the seller will clear those up before we convey. The seller's going to pay their debt before they can convey. So by the time we're conveying this deed, the only known encumbrances we have are those that have been disclosed, such as easements. The general warranty deed comes with a covenant of quiet enjoyment, which means the grantor promises the grantee that this title will be good against third parties. The grantor is promising the grantee that nobody can show up later and lay claim to this property. All the grantors that need to sign this deed to convey and their spouses are in agreement to convey the property. The grantee is allowed this quiet enjoyment, the right to use their property without interference from any third parties trying to lay claim to the property. Covenant of further assurance. The grantor is promising the grantee that if something is discovered after closing, I'll come back and make it right. Was there an error? Was there a spouse that didn't sign? I don't know. If something does happen, the grantor is promising the grantee, we'll make it right. We'll get with an attorney and do what we need to do to clear this up. And then the covenant of warranty forever, the grantor is promising the grantee that if at any time in the future the title fails, I'm going to make it right. These are some big promises to make. Yes? Doesn't this make the grantee feel a little bit better about buying? So the what ifs, I hear you. What if? What if the seller lies? What if the seller commits fraud? What if one of those spouses don't sign? What if, what if, what if? In just a bit, we're going to talk to you guys about something called title insurance. And title insurance, what does insurance do? It protects you if something, it helps you if something bad happens, right? Health insurance, auto insurance. Title insurance protects the new owner from errors of the past. So if there's anything this grantor didn't do as promised, title insurance is there to protect the new owner. Again, talking more about title insurance in just 1 second. Also understand this about the general warranty deed. Not only is the grantor making all these promises to the grantee, but they're also saying all these promises. I promise you that nobody can lay claim to the property, not just during the time that I owned it, but I can also promise you that nobody can lay claim to the property from when the owner before me owned it, and the owner before them, and the owner before them. So this promise made is not just during the time I owned it. This promise made is back to the beginning of time. That promise just got a lot more real, didn't it? A lot more severe. How does the grantor make sure that they're fulfilling all their promises? This is why we have closing attorneys. We will talk, the closing attorney, guys, the buyer hires the closing attorney, which means through the eyes of the closing attorney, the buyer is their client. And it is the closing attorney's job to make sure that their buyer client is getting clear marketable title and a general warranty deed. That's a huge responsibility of the attorney. We'll talk more about their role in just a bit. So the buyer's taking these steps to make sure that these promises are fulfilled in the general warranty deed. And the promise goes back to the beginning of time. Most commonly used deed, best deed for the grantee, because it puts the risk on the grantor. Questions on our general warranty deed? Another type of deed that may be used is a special warranty deed. This doesn't have as many promises. This doesn't have as many covenants. A special warranty deed, the grantor only makes 2 promises. The grantor promises the grantee that I have received the title, I am the owner of record, and during the time I owned it, this property was not encumbered. If we did put any encumbrances on it, I will take care of them before I convey. The special warranty deed only promises during the time that I own the property, only the time that the grantor owns the property. It does not go back to the previous owner, the owner before them, and the owner before them. It's only making 2 promises during the time that I own the property. Where we usually see special warranty deeds are with foreclosures. So question comes in, what if the property has an easement? And an easement is an encumbrance, right? The buyer will accept the property with that easement because it's appurtenant, so it'll transfer. So yes, you will accept properties with an easement. You got to have water, power, internet, all that good stuff. It's hard to buy property without an easement, but you're going to know about it. And that's what the grantor is warranting to you. Yes, it has an encumbrance, but it's a good encumbrance, right? Because it's giving you water and power. So special warranty deeds, again, we typically see with foreclosures. We talk about foreclosures a little bit in our financing units. So bear with me. We'll talk about foreclosures. Special warranty deed, again, only 2 promises made, and those promises only hold for the time that the grantor owned the property. I'm not making any promises before I purchased. Another type of deed we don't see this much in North Carolina, but it's something called a bargain and sale deed. In North Carolina, we use a quitclaim deed, which is the very next slide. With a bargain and sale deed, there are no express warranties. Remember, we introduced you to express the other day. We said if something is express, it means that the terms have been clearly stated. In a bargain and sale deed, you don't have express warranties. You have implied warranties. Does this make you a little nervous? Implied, demonstrated by the actions. This isn't a good deed. Bargain and sale. What do y'all think of when you walk into the store and you head back to the bargain and sale bin? Sometimes you get lucky, yes? Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get what's in the bin, don't you? Bargain and sale deed. Again, other states. North Carolina, we're more apt to use something called a quitclaim deed. With a quitclaim deed, there are no warranties, express nor implied. No warranties. Quitclaim deeds are used to make a correction. Maybe the address was wrong on the general warranty deed. Maybe somebody's name was spelled wrong. There was an error. So we could use a quitclaim deed to correct it. If we're going to release a deed, if you want to convey, for example, maybe you bought a property and then you got married and you want to create a tenancy by the entirety. You could use a quitclaim deed. We would convey the property from me to us. Fast forward down the road and we're getting a divorce. We may use the quitclaim deed to convey the property from us to me. Quitclaim deeds are used to create easements. Here's our pertinent easements. Personal easements and gross. Your book under quitclaim deed mentions something called a cloud on title. A cloud on title is just a defect. It's an error. Something's wrong and it's got to be corrected. And again, if it's just a grammatical error, spelling error, quitclaim deed can be used to do that. No warranties, express nor implied. Basically, what the quitclaim deed says is you get what I got. So if I got nothing, what you gonna get? Just that. Absolutely nothing. We're not conveying. Pages 90 and 91 list some other special purpose deeds. I'll let you guys go through these. I just pulled a few out. If we have a mistake, maybe we don't use a quitclaim deed. Maybe instead we use a correction deed. Both can be used for the same purpose. It's going to depend on the attorney or the judge if we use a quitclaim deed or a correction deed. The trustee's deed is used. We talked about trusts back in Unit 2, where you have the grantor, the beneficiary, and then the trustee, a third party that's handling the affairs on behalf of the beneficiary. So the trustee's deed would be used in that scenario. A sheriff's deed is going to be used if the court takes the property. I always remember the sheriff's deed this way. If the court's taken the property, the judge themselves isn't going to go put the eviction notice on the door, are they? Who is the judge going to send to evict? They're going to send the sheriff. So if the court's taken the property, deed of gift, if you want to give your property, maybe to a family member, parent or child, you could convey so using a deed of gift. Again, some more examples for you guys, 90 to 91, but this just gives us an idea. Questions on the different types of deeds? Yeah.
This might be redundant, but In other states, they would use probably a quitclaim deed to fix those defects or corrections on names. And then North Carolina, we would use the correction deed, or is that just?
Yeah, North Carolina, we could use a quitclaim deed or a correction deed. So there's no one right. Either one can be used. And I mean, bottom line, it comes down to the attorney and the judge and probably the situation of
Okay.
which one we want to use.
Thank you.
Of course. So voluntary alienation means that you choose to separate yourself from the property. You choose to alienate yourself from the property. Another method for transferring title is involuntary alienation, which means you're losing the property, usually by operation of law. For whatever reason, the courts have come in and have decided to take your property. You're separating yourselves from it, but you're not doing it on your own accord. You're doing it involuntarily. Nice little chart for you guys on the top of page 92. Kind of breaks down the involuntary method. Let's see, can a quitclaim deed be used to remove a spouse from the deed in case of divorce? Yes. So we could use a quitclaim deed to convey from us to me. So involuntary alienation, a couple forms. First off, we have something called escheat. If the court is taking the property escheat, it's the property owner has passed away. They have passed without a will or heirs. Escheat means no will, no heirs. The state will take the property, no will, no heirs, lose the property to escheat. The state takes the property and they do with it what they want. Another form of involuntary alienation is eminent domain. I know we've heard about this one. This pops up on the news every once in a while, doesn't it? And people generally don't like this, understandably. With eminent domain, the government has the right to take our property to use it for public good. Maybe they're taking the whole property. Maybe they're just taking a strip of the front yard to widen the road. But eminent domain, the government has decided that they need your property and they are going to go through the court process, condemnation, to take it. When they take your property, whether it's the whole property or just a portion of it, they will offer you just compensation. So they're not just going to take it, they'll pay you for what they're taking. Here's the thing though, you guys. Just compensation is just paying you for the land, the part of the property that they're taking. What they don't take into consideration is how that could overall affect the value of the property. If they decide they want to widen the road in front of your house, they may, eminent domain, come take 5 feet in front of your house, that 5 feet strip along your land. And they'll pay you for that, absolutely. But what about the fact that your house is now 5 feet closer to this now newly widened road? Do we lose some value? Possibly. Have we seen this in your areas? They come in and widen a road and you think, dang, those poor people's houses is so close to the road now. Have you guys seen this? That's what they're not compensating you for. They will compensate you for what they take, just compensation. But they're not going to compensate you for how it affects the value somewhere down the road. Again, maybe they want to take the whole property. Maybe they just take a piece of it. Even if you own fee simple absolute, how about that? Highest form of ownership. And guess what? If the government decides they want some of your land, unit 1. Yep. Yeah, Cody.
How does the government come up with what they give you for the compensation? They go by the assessed value?
So they may go by the assessed value. They may hire an appraiser to go out there and get, value today, right? That just value today. They'll send you a letter, right? And sometimes I've known people that fight this. I don't know that sometimes people win, but sometimes people don't. So when you get the letter, they'll tell you what's up and what they want to take and how much they're going to offer you and what steps to take next. But yeah, they either go by the assessed value for tax purposes, or they'll probably have an appraiser come out and determine what that value is worth right now. Again, we see this on the news sometimes, don't we? People generally don't like this. I can't blame them. Yep. Can someone try to sell once they receive notice of eminent domain? Probably what's going to happen. Remember, we talked about lis pendens and a writ of attachment, like a legal stop. So what they will probably do is put something on record saying eminent domain is happening. And that prevents the shady seller from selling it from out from underneath, right? Before somebody lets somebody else buy before they take the property. So generally, this is going to be something that'll be public notice, be recorded. So could you sell once you receive notice? You could, but the buyer's attorneys should find it. They should find that warning. Don't you buy, because we're going through this eminent domain process. Another form of involuntary alienation is foreclosure, specifically mortgage lien foreclosure. Failure to pay your liens, failure to pay your mortgage means that the lender could foreclose on you. They could take your property to get their money. So foreclosure, the property's taken to satisfy a debt. We're going to talk about foreclosure. Units 14 and 15 are our financing units. So we'll talk about foreclosure, a little bit more about that process and how that works. And then the last method for involuntary alienation is something called adverse possession. So let's go back for a second. You guys remember in Unit 2, we talked about easements. And one easement that we talked about was an easement by prescription. And an easement by prescription says if somebody's been using your land for 20 years or so, they could go to the judge and request permanent permission to use your land. They could request an easement. Look, Your Honor, I've been using this for 20 years. Just give me the easement. Adverse possession is taking easement by prescription a step further. Now, the claimant is not asking for permission to use the land. The claimant is asking for the land. And if the judge agrees with the claimant, you could use your land due to adverse possession. Again, maybe it's the entire property, maybe it's just a portion of it. So easement by prescription is permission, permanent permission to use the land. Adverse possession is taking the land. When the judge is faced with adverse possession, the judge is going to ask the claimant a series of questions to determine if they should get the land via adverse possession. And the questions that the judge is going to ask the claimant, we can best remember by thinking of Ocean. The judge is going to ask the claimant, is your use open? Were you hiding the fact that you were using the land? Again, maybe you moved an RV or a tent on the land and you've been living there for the last 20 years. Maybe you guys, it's just a small portion of your fence that's on somebody else's land and has been there for 20 years. Is the use open? There's not much you can do to hide a fence, is there? So is the use open? Has it been continuous, which means it's continuously been used for 20 years? There's not a break in that period. Is it exclusive, meaning we only have one claimant? There's only one person that can claim using the land, that can claim the land. It's adverse, which means the claimant has to claim it. This doesn't just happen. If you want somebody's property for adverse possession, you got to actually claim it in front of a judge. And then it's got to be notorious, which means it's well known without permission of the owner. So if the owner gives you permission to use their land, if the owner says, oh, you know what, your fence is fine, don't worry about it, now the claimant can't claim adverse possession. Guys, it's not as easy to get somebody off your land as what we realize. Getting somebody off your land is a process. It's complicated. It gets messy fast. Attorneys are involved. And if you got somebody using your land and you're sitting here now worried about, oh my gosh, how do I prevent them from adverse possession? Just give them permission. Once you give them permission, now they can't claim it by adverse possession. And you can start the process to get them off, but at least they can't take your land by adverse possession. It's got to be notorious, which means you do not have permission from the owner. Is this mind blowing to y'all? Every time I go through this myself, I think, dang, somebody can take my land. And the answer is, sure, absolutely. Now the judge is doing this. You and I aren't going to try to hash this out. The judge is doing this. Can the permission be verbal? It can, but you're not going to stand up well that in a court of law. So what would we want to do with verbal permission? Document it. And that way you have, when you have to go in front of a judge, we don't want to stand there with a he said, she said thing. Does that make sense? If we have to go stand in front of a judge, I want my documentation that I told you, sure, use my fence, no problem, or use the land for your fence. Now we've talked about this. How would it be open and known? Well, that fence is open. We can see that. Notorious, again, we have permission. Would the claimant need to pay for the land that they take? That's going to be up to the judge. If you go to the judge and say, my fence has been on that land for 20 years, and you haven't had to pay anything up until this point, are they going to make you pay much now? Maybe not. They're not going to retroactive. All that's up to the judge. And again, it depends on what we're talking. Are we talking about a 5-foot corner for the fence? Or are we talking about the whole 5 acres? Right? There's a big difference here in what we're talking about as well. Each of them are handled on a case-by-case scenario. So with adverse possession, I've been talking about 20 years, and that's mostly the case. 20 years if you don't have what's referred to as color of title. So 20 years with no color of title. If you do have color of title, you may be able to claim adverse possession in 7 years. What is color of title? Color of title is some sort of faulty document that gives the claimant reason to believe that the land is theirs. Maybe something was forged, but for some reason, the claimant has documentation that makes them believe that that land is theirs. And if so, they could try to claim adverse possession within 7 years. So again, if it's open, you're not hiding the fact that you're using it. I mean, think about an abandoned property. You guys see these sometimes driving around and the house looks like the next good gust of wind is just going to topple it over. Where is that owner, right? So let's just pretend for a second that that owner moved here from Texas. They bought a house. They decided this wasn't working out for them, so they were going to go back to Texas. They abandoned their land. They don't check on it. They pay the taxes every year, so they're not hitting anybody's radar there, right? But they're not checking on it. They're not keeping up with it. Could somebody move on the land and start using it and you don't even know they're there? Time goes on, you forget less and less about this property you own in North Carolina. All you know is once a year you're sitting down paying your taxes. Could this happen? Absolutely. Like I said, the encroachment. Your fence has been on my land for 20 years anyway. Why not? Why not have that land? Let's look at an example of where this may apply to me and you. So you are a broker contacted by a prospective client that wants to sell 5 acres of land. The client explains that they don't have a deed, but they've been farming the land for over 25 years without any objection from the owner. While we may have an adverse possession, the client first needs to prove to the court that they've met all the requirements. The court has to give them the title via adverse possession. If you're called on in this case, what we need to do is tell this property owner to call their attorney. I'm not going to list it until I know whose it is to sell. So my little red flag went up telling me, hey, thank you for calling me. Everything that I know looks like this is good, but until you receive that title, until you get that property via adverse possession, let's hold off until we know for sure. With these cases, with anything with the judge trying to resolve something about the property, that's just referred to, again, just to be familiar with the verbiage, that's just referred to as the action to quiet title. So if there's an issue with the title, if there's something that needs to happen to it, legality, the legal process is referred to the action to quiet the title. So if we have the event of adverse possession, and you're going to lose some of your property, this would be the legal process that the judge goes through. Questions on our involuntary alienation. The court's taken the property for whatever reason. Okay. All right, last break. We come back, we keep marching along in Unit 5. And we're back. So let me go ahead. Cameras are on and I can see you, but it's got to be twofold. So let me go ahead and take attendance. And we talked about voluntary alienation. We've talked about involuntary alienation. A couple more methods that can be used to transfer title. You could transfer title by descent, also known as intestate succession. If an individual passes away with heirs but no will, they pass by descent. Remember, escheat was no will, no heirs. Descent, no will, but you have heirs. So the state's gonna attempt to find the heirs. The state will attempt to find the heirs. If they can pass it by descent. If they can't, they may need to pass it by escheat. And then the fourth and final method for transferring title is by will, also known as testate succession. So your will is the document used that conveys your real property and your personal property upon the death of the owner, just for formalities. A devise is conveying real property. A bequest is conveying personal property via a will. Questions on the four methods of transferring title: voluntary, involuntary, descent, and by will. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this idea of title, the closing attorney's role, all that good stuff. So before we jump into that, let's do a quick refresher. Basically, you guys, title and deed are saying the same thing. They're both doing the same thing. The title is the right. The title is the idea. What did we just say we were going to document? What do we document? I forget. Everything.
Everything.
Thank you. Yes, everything. So is the idea of ownership, does that sit well with you? That you can say, "Ooh, it's mine," and the idea with no documentary proof, no documentary evidence? Y'all like the sounds of that? Absolutely not. So how do you prove it? With the deed. So the title is the idea, the deed is the proof. The deed is the tangible thing that you can touch to prove that it's yours. The deed is what gets recorded. So with that refresher, let's talk some about our title examination. This is the attorney's process. So as we said earlier, the buyer hires the closing attorney. The seller needs some work for the closing attorney as well. So maybe the seller will allow the buyer's attorney to do it. Maybe the seller brings their own representation. Maybe they get their own attorney. We will talk more about that process. Buyers and sellers contract to closing process. That's coming in Unit 21. So for right now, we're focusing on the attorney. Buyer hires the attorney, which means the closing attorney's client is the buyer. And it's the closing attorney's responsibility to make sure that their buyer client is getting clear marketable title. And one of the first things that the closing attorney is going to do is a very thorough search of the public records. And they're going to look for any document, any recorded document in the public records that affect this title, that affect this property. Public record search, meaning who has access to it? Who can view this? The public. Where are my homeowners on the call again? Did you guys know your deed was public record? Did you know you could go out to your county after class? Don't do it now. That's a distraction. But after class, you could go out to your county, you could search your deed and you can find it. You don't have to log on. You don't need any kind of special permission. Heck, after class, I could go find your deed if I wanted to. That's what we mean by public records. It's available to everybody. Even though it's available to everybody, you and I could do our own public records search. But the attorney is the one that does their search because they got to offer their opinion. This is where the legalities come in. The attorney, as the attorney for the buyer, has a duty to make sure that their buyer client gets clear marketable title. So when they search that public record, if they find anything that can prevent their buyer client from getting clear marketable title, the attorney is getting with the seller before closing to take care of it. Do they have outstanding liens? The seller's going to pay them off before they close. Is there a fraudulent or a bad document? The attorney's going to fix it before we close. Maybe the seller has to provide documentation. Maybe the seller has to go stand in front of a judge and try to get the action to quiet title. Maybe it's something that the seller and the attorney can't correct and the judge has to do it for them. Whatever it is, the attorney will make sure that the seller clears up any of their liens, outstanding issues, anything that may show up on that title before they convey it to their buyer client. The attorney's going to offer their opinion, title insurance, which I will talk about in a second. Title insurance is not going to issue a policy until they've received the opinion from the attorney. And the attorney's saying, look, I've done the record search. I thoroughly went through this property and studied, found everything there could possibly be to found about this property. And we're going to take care of it. That is the closing attorney's biggest role, biggest responsibility, is making sure they do whatever it is they have to do to make sure that their buyer client gets clear marketable title. Every time somebody buys, every time a property is conveyed, the new owner should start with a clean slate. And that's the attorney's job. Let you start with a clean slate. So we're doing this record search. We're finding liens. Liens get recorded. We're finding liens. We're finding various things. And the attorney's taking care of it with the seller before we convey. Another piece of the public record search that the attorney's doing is they're researching those previously recorded deeds. And what they're looking at with those researching those deeds is the chain of title. We need the deeds to link. Give me a second. Let me make sure I say this right. The grantee on this deed needs to match the grantor on the previous deed. The grantee on the previous deed needs to match the grantor on the previous deed. That's what we're looking for with the linking conveyances. Did this grantee get the property from this grantor? This grantee from this grantor, so on and so on. And I always think of it as like a chain. And if we don't have any kinks in the chain, we're good. We got chain of title. If we find, or if the attorney finds a kink, if the attorney finds an issue, we have a cloud on title, we have a defect on the title that needs to be addressed and corrected before the new owner will receive that title. The whole, well, a big part of the attorney's responsibility is giving marketable title, assuring their buyer client that what they're receiving is marketable title. The seller can't assure the title. The buyer, the real estate agent, the only one that can assure the title is the attorney. Stay in your lane. Let them do their job. They get paid the big bucks, yes? Let them do their job. And if they have an issue, they will reach out to the seller, because that's the seller's biggest obligation, is to pass that marketable title. So as we mentioned, the attorney, to assure the title, it all starts with a very thorough search of the public records. Anything on public records that could somehow, anyway, good or bad, affect this title, it must be discovered and corrected. Now, some titles are more complicated than others. Some pieces of land have been subdivided recently. Some land has been as it is since, back in the colonial days, right? So each tract of land, each property is a little bit different. And if there's not many issues, if it's a more simple process, the attorney may conduct what's known as an abstract of title. Let's think of an abstract of title as kind of like the Cliff's Notes. It's kind of a condensed version. They're still doing a title search, but they're doing a more of a condensed version, because maybe there's only been one owner on this property, on this title. For example, again, every time land gets subdivided or put together, we're dealing with new titles. We're dealing with new property lines. So various reasons why the attorney may choose to do an abstract, an abbreviated version of the full-blown title search. And in North Carolina, we have something called the Marketable Title Act. And if there's no flags, if there's no glitches, the Marketable Title Act says that if the attorney can go back for 30 years and not find a cloud on title, they can claim it to be marketable. So when we talk about going back to the beginning of time, is that what the attorney's doing? Maybe. It depends on the title. But if we can go back 30 years and we don't see any issues, you know what? We can go ahead and say, we're good to go. If a flag goes up, if we find an issue, the attorney may choose to go back further. But the Marketable Title Act says if we go back 30 years and don't find an issue, it's safe to say we're okay. Another thing the attorney does that we've kind of danced all around, but let's officially talk about it. Let's talk about title insurance. Title insurance is issued from a title insurance companies. There are companies out there that just offer title insurance. Title insurance is meant to protect the current owner. When you sell your property, you lose that protection of title insurance. The new owner will probably purchase title insurance. It's one of these things that just happens at closing, that you probably bought a house and have title insurance. You just didn't know. It's just one of those things that happens. And what title insurance is meant to do is to protect the new owner from errors of the past. So remember all those liens, all those encumbrances, all those encroachments, all those bad things that the seller has. What if? What if the attorney misses something? What if they don't discover something? What if they can't discover something? Maybe a fraudulent document, for example. The attorney's going to do what they can to make sure they're passing you this clear marketable title. Title insurance answers the question, what if? What if something gets missed? Title insurance is meant to protect the current owner from owners of the past. Errors and owners, I guess. Errors of the past. With title insurance, there's almost always two policies. If the buyer's getting a loan, The lender will have a policy. If it's a cash buyer, then we just have one policy. So the owner's policy, they're covered for as long as they own the property. Title insurance will cover them for as long as they own the property. The lender's policy is going to cover them for as long as we have an outstanding loan on the property. Once you pay your lender off, what interest does your lender have in this property now? You give them everything. You've paid them all the money you owe them. What interest do they have? Yeah, they're done, aren't they? They're moving on. So their policy is only going to be paid, the lender's policy, and it'll diminish as you pay that down. Their interest goes down. So as their interest in the property diminishes, so does their policy. You make that final payment. The lender no longer has a reason to be protected under title insurance. So let's go back just for 1 second. Let's talk about a what if, probably a more real world scenario. Remember in Unit 2, we talked about mechanics liens. And we said anybody that performs labor or service, labor or supplies to a property that doesn't get paid has the right to file a lien, right? Who remembers how many days they have to file the lien after the work ends?
Was it 120?
120 days. So let's talk about a scenario. Couple different possibilities here. You are your buyer and seller under contract. The buyer does their due diligence. They do their inspections and investigation on the property. More on that coming, I promise. The buyer does their research, inspections, and investigations, and they find things wrong with it because there is no such thing as a perfect home. All homes have some kind of problem with it. So they find something wrong, and the buyer asks the sellers to do repairs. Now, one thing we're going to learn in North Carolina, the seller's not required to repair anything. So buyer asks the sellers to do repairs. Does the seller have to fix a thing? Y'all, they don't have to change a light bulb if they don't want to, okay? But what if the seller does agree to do repairs? And the seller does repairs. And then we go to closing. And the seller never pays the mechanic. And then we go to closing. And the mechanic, it's not been 120 days yet. So the mechanic files the lien after closing. Mechanic's lien is a specific lien, which means it attaches to what?
The land.
The property, the land. So congratulations on your brand new home. Hey, here's a lien that you didn't even do. It's just because of neglect of the seller. Could we see where this could be a problem? This is the kind of thing that protects the buyer under title insurance. If the mechanic hasn't filed the lien yet, the closing attorney's not going to find it in the public records. And if the mechanic files the lien after closing, now this owner goes to sell, and guess what? They have this lien pop up on the title search. Title insurance will require the seller to sign an affidavit that says this isn't going to happen. The seller promises, I've paid off all mechanics. They're all paid in full. Do people lie sometimes? Unfortunately, yes. What can I do to stop the seller from lying? Not much. So what if the seller says, oh yeah, everything's paid. This is taken care of. You don't have to worry about it. We go to closing, the mechanic files the lien, and now you have a lien on your property. Title insurance will almost always go after the previous owner first because they signed something saying this wasn't going to happen. If the previous owner is broke or dead or MIA, then title insurance is going to cover the owner from that era of the past. Remember, insurance is there to help you if something bad happens. If something bad happens. So what does title insurance say? It's there to help you if something bad happens to your title. So the closing attorney does this title search, the closing attorney offers their opinion of title. Based on the attorney's opinion of title is whether or not the title insurance company will agree to release title insurance for the new owner. Today, they're the buyer. Tomorrow, they're the owner. So let's look at a few examples together. Title insurance. After the title policy is issued, it's later discovered that a previous deed was forged and is thus void. Title insurance is going to indemnify the buyer because this title defect existed prior to the effective date of the policy, and there's no way you can find, or an attorney can find, a forged document via a public record search. So understand the attorney can do a whole lot, and they do, but they still can't discover everything. And that's why our new owner, that's why our buyer has title insurance to protect them about some of these things that nobody couldn't discover, nobody can find. It just came up later. Same thing with the mechanics lien. Let's look at another example. Buyer's buying a home and declines to have the survey done before closing. After closing, it's discovered that there's an encroachment. Guess what? Title insurance isn't going to help this buyer. Title insurance is going to say, had you had a survey done, we would identify this encroachment and it would have been taken care of prior to settlement. So because you chose to decline, you chose to waive the survey, and now you want title insurance to take care of this for you, what do you think title insurance is going to say? Guess you should have had a survey done. Another good point, another good reason for us to explain to our buyers about the benefits of a survey, about the importance of a survey. Because most things that could have been discovered by a survey, title insurance ain't gonna touch. Isn't that something? So encourage your buyers to have a survey. We're gonna make sure we explain the importance. Bottom line, I can't make anybody do anything. But if they say, no, I'm not gonna do it, I need to document that for when this goes down. Does that make sense? I can't make anybody do anything, but I can protect myself in the future. And how do I protect myself? Document, document, document. We're going to talk about forms. We're going to talk about conversations, emails, and text messages. Notes of importance on a subway napkin. Anything relevant to this transaction, document. If it goes down, I want you guys to be protected. And the number one way I know for you guys, well, the number two way. Number one way to protect yourself is no license, law, and commission rule, which is why we're here. Number two, document everything. Bless you. Document everything. Questions on title insurance? Another thing that the attorney is going to do once closing has happened, once the property is transferred hands from grantor to grantee, the attorney is going to record the grantee's brand new deed. So title recordation. By recording your brand new deed, you're putting that document on public record. This is referred to as constructive notice. By placing that document in public record, you're letting the world know, guess what? I am the owner of record because I am the one that recorded this deed. I am the one that got this deed recorded at the courthouse. So by recording, it puts the entire world on notice. I am the owner of record. The attorney generally, after they record the buyer's new deed, the grantee's new deed, the very next thing that the attorney do will record the mortgage, the deed of trust. They're doing that on behalf of the lender. My homeowners on the call will tell you, in some cases, you may not have even gotten the key to your house yet before you had a lien on the property. The lender's recording that lien. As soon as that sucker closes, the attorney's going to record the deed of trust, also known as the mortgage, to protect the lender's interest. Again, more on the lender. All that's coming in our financing units. Everything with the recordation process has to fall in like a certain timeline or a certain time stamp. So before the attorney can record the grantee's new deed, the attorney needs to clear the seller. So all those outstanding liens, they're going to record a lien satisfaction. May also be referred to as a deed of release. We got to release the property from these liens before we can convey, before we can change owners from grantor to grantee. So through the proceeds of the closing, the attorney's going to use the seller's money to pay off all those outstanding liens. And then to prove that they've paid off those outstanding liens, they're going to require a lien or record a lien satisfaction. Once all the seller's lien issues have been satisfied, then we can start fresh. We can start anew with the grantee's new deed, deed of trust, etc. Again, what we need to understand is there's a certain time stamp that things have to happen. This day of closing almost has to tell a picture. It's got to tell the story of what happened today. And before the seller can give their deed to the new owner, the seller needs to pay off their existing liens. And that's what this story tells us. You pay everything off, and then you convey. Anything that hits the title after that is on the new owner. Questions on the attorney's piece of it? We'll spend some more time with the attorney. Again, Unit 21, we get into contract to closing process. So what happens from the day we go under contract to the day we close? So we'll have the attorneys. They're a very big role in that contract to closing process. We're going to meet all sorts of people. The home inspector, pest inspector, surveyor, radon mitigation specialist. Oh yeah, we're going to meet all sorts of people in that contract to closing process. The lender is just one or another, not the lender, the attorney. Both are big pieces in that. Questions? All right, we did a soft introduction to the Connor Act earlier, but let's officially meet Connor. Specifically, in North Carolina, we have something called the North Carolina Connor Act. This is a state law. Y'all, this thing is a problem topic all day long. Connor says there are certain documents that must be recorded. Now, we're going to look at a list of those certain documents in just 1 second. Connor says there's a list of documents that must be recorded. Why? So that they're valid against third parties. We've got to protect the current owner. And one way we can protect the current owner is to require certain documents to be placed on public record, in public record. Again, to notify the world, you are the owner of record. And anything to do with recording falls under the North Carolina Connor Act. This is a great candidate for a flashcard. Connor Act says there are certain documents that has to be recorded to be enforceable against third parties. So what documents specifically does Connor Act want us to record? Well, you're going to record your brand new deed. The attorney will do that for you. You're going to record your deed of trust, which is the mortgage, which is for the lender to protect themselves. Connor says leases more than 3 years need to be recorded. Now let's talk about that for a second. If you have a lease that's more than 3 years, this is not 3 years. This is 3 years and 1 day. More than 3 years. Typically speaking, we're talking about commercial leases. Most residential leases are for a year at a time. Now, you could have a 10-year residential lease, of course, but mostly speaking, we're referring to commercial leases. Regardless if it's commercial or residential, Connor Act says if at the onset, the originally agreed upon time is more than 3 years, we got to protect the interest of the tenant. And how do we protect the interest of the tenant? We record the lease. So if the shady seller tries to sell it out from underneath the tenant, this will pull up in the closing attorney search. Easements need to be recorded, restrictive covenants, liens, installment land contracts and options. We'll actually talk about in Unit 10, so let's hang on to those for a second. Assignments we'll talk about as well. With an assignment, if you're assigning your rights and obligations, typically speaking with an assignment, all the terms stay the same. The only thing that changes is the name of one of the parties. So you are assigning your contractual rights to somebody else. And Connor says assignments need to be recorded. Connor says there are certain documents that must be recorded. Why? To be enforceable against third parties. We want the world to know that this is yours. And it's protecting you, it's protecting third parties. North Carolina is what's referred to as a pure race state, which basically says it's a race to the courthouse. And the first one that gets their document on record wins. Failure to record means you don't have a leg to stand on if you're standing in front of the judge saying this is my property. Because Connor, the Connor Act requires us to record. There's a really good example in our books on page 101. The second example there, Zackerman sells her property to Sands. Sands fails to record the deed. Sands obviously didn't have an attorney or didn't have a good attorney. But for whatever reason, this deed didn't get to record. 2 weeks later, Shady Zackerman sells the same property to Hanson. Hanson suspects that Zackerman is no longer the owner, but accepts the deed, runs to the courthouse, and records it. Because Hanson got to the courthouse first, who has marketable title? Yep, the first one there wins. Yep, the first one. Isn't that something? Another good reason to have closing attorneys, yes? Yes, because the attorney's going to get this thing on record. Like I said, a lot of times, you guys, if you bought a house, your deed was recorded before you got your key. That's pretty quick, isn't it? We'll talk more about that process, contract to closing process, all that when we get to Unit 21. If North Carolina is a pure race state, other states may use a TORNS system. This is just a registration. Other states may not record, but you need to register to verify that you're the owner of record. Just kind of a side note there, what other states may do. Questions? Why don't you guys do something for me real quick? Turn to your books on page 100. Page 100, do you guys see that first in practice? This is a piece straight from our standard offer to purchase and contract that we're going to look at in unit 10. But this is just a little excerpt from that. Why don't you guys just take a second and read that first in practice? The reason I like to point that out to you guys, I think the first couple classes, we're wondering like, why are we talking about this stuff? Why are we talking about attorneys and encumbrances and this kind of thing? Guys, what we're doing is we're building you up. We're laying the foundation so we can now interpret and use things like the sales contract. Are there words in that paragraph that a week ago you didn't know? Like, for example, general warranty deed, fee simple marketable insurable title, mechanics liens, free from other liens and encumbrances, accurate and current survey, ad valorem taxes. There's easements again, our CCRs, our covenants. There's a whole lot of words in that paragraph that a week or two ago you may not have known, right? And now you have a better understanding of that paragraph. Y'all give yourselves a pat on the back. We've come a long way so far, haven't we? And once we start next week, we're going to start bringing the broker role into it. We're going to start talking more about us. And I know that's why you guys are here, and I get that. But before we can talk about the broker, we got to build up to it. And that's what we're doing so far. So now you guys can pick up a sales contract and help a buyer and seller and better understand what the heck that paragraph is saying. Makes sense. This class builds on itself. And we are shoot, I just met you guys last week, didn't I? And we're already building. We're already chucking right along. So you guys keep those small attaboys or attagirl, those small wins. That's what we celebrate until we get to the big celebration in November. Fair enough? Does that sound good? Do we like this? We're learning. Yay. The last piece of Unit 5, we're actually going to get 3 to 5 today. So I'll talk about what next week's going to look like in just a second. The last thing to talk about in Unit 5 is something called excise tax. Some of us old school people may still refer to it as revenue stamps. Excise tax is paid by the grantor. Who's the grantor? I can see your mouse move. Who's the grantor? The giver of the document, also known as in this case, seller. So this is an expense that the seller pays at closing. They're going to tax you when you buy it. They're going to tax you while you own it. And guess what? They're going to get you one more time when you sell it. And that one more time when you sell it is referred to as excise tax, revenue stamps, etc. Excise tax is calculated on the purchase price. Excise tax is 5/100ths of the purchase price. So to determine how much the grantor has to pay for excise tax, we're going to take the purchase price, the agreed upon contract price of the property. You're going to divide by 500. Excise tax is 5/100ths of the purchase price. Here's the trick to excise tax. Once you take the purchase price and divide by 500, excise tax will never have change. So if you calculate excise tax and you get change, round up to the nearest whole dollar. Always round up. Take everything you thought you knew about rounding, chuck it out the window. So let's say, and we'll look at an example for just in just a second. So let's say you calculate your excise tax and you find out you come up with $407.12. Rounding tells us that this should be 407, right? Everything we thought we knew about rounding says that this is going to be 407. But with excise tax, we always round up. So no matter what the change is, you always go to the next whole number, and that will be what the seller pays at settlement, part of their debits. They will pay $408. So purchase price, sales price, divided by 500, then round up to the nearest whole dollar. Never, ever will you have change with excise tax. So tell me in a private chat, A, B, C, or D. So excise tax. We take our sales price, the agreed upon purchase price, 750, divide by 500. That gives me $499.50. You're never going to have change. So once you divide by 500, then we round up to the nearest whole dollar. What's the nearest whole dollar? $500. So what's the seller going to pay? This seller paying excise tax? $500. It's part of their debits. We're going to talk about buyers and sellers, debits and credits. All that's in Unit 21. Unit 21 is our closing unit. Excise tax is one of these things you guys like to make a lot harder than what it is. Purchase price, divide by 500, round up. Everything you need to know about excise tax, I just said in one breath. Purchase price, divided by 500, round up. We'll see this again in 21. And that gets us through Unit 5, just chucking right along. Those key terms, please spend some time with the key terms in Unit 5. Unit 5 tends to be a unit that we struggle with because I think a lot of it is the closing attorney's responsibility. And while we're not trying to act like attorneys, I'm not trying to be an attorney, I need a basic understanding of what the attorney does in this transaction. So that's what Unit 5 covers for us. So please be familiar with those key terms. You got your key point review on page 103, your summary. And then you got that student quiz on page 106. And I hesitate to call it math, but it is because we pick a calculator up. The math concepts on 102 is talking about the excise tax. Purchase price, divide by 500 and round up. That's the math in Unit 5. Yes, ma'am.
When you say round up, does that mean like it has to be like a whole like $100 amount?
Nope, just
So
a whole
like-
dollar.
Okay, so even if it's 179, it can be 179, just no change.
Correct. Correct. Other questions? Before we go, hang on, don't go yet. I'm not done with you yet. So don't forget. Don't forget, you guys, starting next week, we go until 2 o'clock. So we'll still meet at 9, log on at 9. And for the next, I don't know, however many classes that is, we're going to switch gears and start going from 9 to 2. So we're going to go from 8 hours a week to 10 hours a week for a couple weeks. Excise tax was probably a red star. Anytime they say the word math, it's a red star because we need to know the calculation of it. Yep. So let's talk about next week. Next week, we go till 2. We are going to go back and pick up the math from Unit 4. We're going to do that first on Tuesday. There's more math for Unit 4 in your book than what you need to know for your test. So we're just going to focus on what we need to know for our test. Once we finish Unit 4, we're going to be ready to jump into Unit 6. Unit 6 is our land use control. So we're going to talk about things about zoning. We're going to talk about restrictive covenants. Once we finish Unit 6, we kind of start getting out of order a little bit. So once we finish Unit 6, then we go back, or we go ahead, I guess I should say. Once we get through 6, then we're going to do Unit 20. Unit 20 is some environmental concerns that we need to be aware of as brokers. And once we get through Unit 20, then we start on Unit 7. And as I've mentioned, and I will mention several times, Units 7, 8, 9, and 10 are heavily tested units. When we get into Unit 7, we're going to start seeing lots of red stars. So we'll blow through 6 and 20, again, introducing you to ideas and concepts. And then next week, we're going to start on agency. Units 7 and 8 are our agency units. Please look ahead. I do think it's helpful for you to be exposed to this material once before we talk about it in class. Has anybody else found that to be the same? At least seeing that word? Good. Please keep it up. If you're caught up, stay caught up. If you're behind, please use this time this weekend to get yourself caught up. Because again, you guys, next week we go from 8 hours to 10. Do you have any questions? All right, that's what I got. You guys have a great weekend. Please don't hesitate to let me know if there's anything I can do to help. If you're stuck on a question, if you're not sure of something, reach out to me. That's why I'm here. Okay?
Thank you, Julie.
All
Have a
right.
nice
Thank you
weekend.
guys.
Thanks,
Have a
Julie.
great weekend.
Bye.